Chapter 573, Stop Bullying That Girl. After finally sending Yuminji away, calming herself down, and clearing her mind, Feng Wu was ready to make a breakthrough. The door opened at that moment. Feng Wu almost jumped to her feet. Who could it be? Feng Wu looked at the door, alarmed. A figure stood there against the silver moonlight, which created a halo around him. He had brooding eyes and a gorgeous figure. He almost looked dazzling under the moonlight. Jun Linyuan. Patting her chest, Feng Wu broke into a cold sweat. 1 second more and she would have entered the state of meditation. If that happened, Jun Linyuan would realize that she was cultivating and had her ability back. Thinking about it logically, he would be reminded of that immortal spiritual fruit back in northern border city. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. That would be a total disaster. Because of the interruption, Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. What are you doing here? Jun Linyuan stood there proudly after pushing the door open. He was waiting for Feng Wu's to plead with him, but instead, he only got that impatient question. He was displeased. His eyes glinted as his murderous gaze locked on Feng Wu. Feng Wu stepped back involuntarily. Jun Linyuan entered the room and slammed the door shut behind him. It didn't wake Chaoga, for Feng Wu had fed her some antidote and the girl was undergoing detoxification at the moment. She was sleeping so soundly that not even thunder would be loud enough to wake her. Feng Xiaoqi and the rest of the family knew nothing about the situation here, for Feng had put up a soundproof barrier around the room and no one in the neighboring rooms would hear a thing. Inside, face livid, Jun Linyuan walked toward Feng Wu with a grim look in his eyes. Feng Wu stumbled back involuntarily. Jun Linyuan, what are you doing? Don't come any closer. Feng Wu kept stumbling back. But Jun Linyuan only gave her a crooked smile. As Jun Linyuan pressed forward, Feng Wu backed off. In the end, Feng Wu was forced into a corner and Jun Linyuan hemmed her in with his right arm. The air suddenly felt very warm. Outside, Yuminji had been following Jun Linyuan stealthily. He saw Jun Linyuan enter Feng Wu's room and close the door behind him. Yuminji then heard Feng Wu's voice. Jun Linyuan, stay away from me. Your hands, hey. Yuminji was incensed. Yuminji charged out impulsively and kicked the door. He yelled as he kicked, Jun Linyuan. Stop what you're doing. Is that what you like? To bully girls? I looked up to you. I never thought you were this kind of person. Open up. Open up. Open up. Yuminji kept kicking the door. Jun Linyuan was enjoying the moment with Feng Wu so close. He bent over when Feng Wu turned her head the other way. The corner of his mouth happened to brush against her smooth cheek and the warm sensation made his heart skip a beat. However, Yuminji's furious voice rang out and Jun Linyuan frowned. He was distracted for a brief moment. Thud. Feng Wu took the opportunity to step hard on his foot. She spared no strength. SSSS. Even Jun Linyuan's face changed color and he stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. How dare she do that to him? Feng Wu freed herself from the little confined space created by Jun Linyuan's arm. She glared at him with an alarmed look on her face. At that moment, Yuminji broke into the room. Chapter 574, I'm going to challenge you to a duel. Yuminji grabbed Feng Wu, pulled her behind him, and stared at Jun Linyuan bravely. Jun Linyuan, I didn't know you could be so despicable. Jun Linyuan's stunning face had turned livid and he was especially enraged when he saw Yuminji pull Feng Wu behind him. Jun Linyuan felt like choking the guy with his bare hands. Yuminji cringed a little when he noticed how frightening Jun Linyuan looked. After all, he might be as famous as Jun Linyuan, but everyone, Yuminji himself included, knew that was only because the Yu family had gone to a lot of effort to make Yuminji sound more superior than he actually was. Yuminji had mixed feelings toward Jun Linyuan. Although he saw Jun Linyuan as his greatest rival, deep down, he still admired the guy and looked up to him. Hence, when Jun Linyuan shifted his piercing gaze to Yu Minji, the latter felt as if he had just been shot with an arrow. Jun Linyuan said through gritted teeth, "Out of my way." He was so intimidating. Yu Minji stumbled back involuntarily. But he stopped almost right away. No. He couldn't back off now, for little Feng Wu was behind him. He had to protect little Feng Wu and make the girl look up to him. Yu Minji clenched his fists and encouraged himself, "Man up." Thus, Yu Minji summoned up his courage, took a step forward, and pointed a finger at Jun Linyuan. "I'm challenging you to a duel." Seriously. Jun Linyuan wasn't the only one rendered speechless. A short distance away, Feng gave Yu Minji a thumbs up in his head. The young man had some balls. No one said a word. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was staring at the back of Yu Minji's head in resignation and at a loss over what to say. Then, Yu Minji gave Feng Wu a little kick with his heel. Feng Wu was confused. "What?" Lowering his voice, Yu Minji prompted her in a serious tone, "Clap for me. Now." "Huh?" Feng Wu was baffled. "Clap." Yu Minji said earnestly, "I'm scared." "Clap for me." Feng Wu rolled her eyes. Read comics on our web novel. Live. Standing outside, Feng was as still as a statue. Despite his calm face, he was cracking up inwardly. That silly boy was so amusing. However, His Royal Highness didn't find Yu Minji amusing at all. Staring at the latter with his intimidating gaze, Jun Linyuan stepped forward, his eyes flickering. Yu Minji fell back a step, dragging Feng Wu with him. He raised his chin and stared back at Jun Linyuan. It was only human nature to feel scared in Jun Linyuan's presence. Instinctively, Yu Minji was flustered by Jun Linyuan's glare, but he wouldn't budge, not when the girl he liked was watching. Hence, he pointed at Jun Linyuan with a shaky finger, while backing away with Feng Wu. Do you think you can intimidate me just because you're famous? And, no way. There. I'm challenging you. Jun Linyuan smirked. You want to challenge me? Fine, I agree. Yu Minji was baffled. He agreed. Jun Linyuan said with a crooked smile, tomorrow, midnight, at the top of Imperial Capital Tower. Yu Minji didn't know what to say. Jun Linyuan snorted. Scared now? Feng Wu was watching and Yu Minji had no choice but to play the tough guy. He raised his chin. Of course not. Shouldn't you be on your way now? Jun Linyuan glanced at him. Why, you can't bully my Xiao Wu while I'm away. You're Xiao Su. His Royal Highness smirked. Yu Minji clenched his fists. Fine. You have to leave her alone if I win. Chapter 575, A Phenomenal Duel. Yu Minji left in a hurry after those words. Somewhere else in the Feng Manor. Feng Yanfeng's family was sleeping. Lady Wang nudged Feng Yanfeng's arm in the dark, but Feng Yanfeng was only half awake. Lady Wang mumbled, Why is it so noisy tonight? Is it? Feng Yanfeng didn't think so. I think I heard something in the direction of Fallen Star Yard. Lady Wang frowned. You heard wrong, Feng Yanfeng said impatiently. Since she was already awake, Lady Wang went on. By the way, Lord Wuan's wife came to visit today and she had a marriage proposal for Xiao Lu. Feng Lu. Feng Yanfeng frowned. That's right. Lady Wang nodded with a smile. That's the Ning family, right? Who's the guy? Ning Chenxi. He's the son of Ning Ziyuan, the governor of Anyuan province, said Lady Wang with a smile. Ning Ziyuan. Feng Yanfeng, who was about to go back to sleep, was wide awake after hearing that name. Ning Ziyuan's family and Northern Feng General are related through marriage, as well as to the Yan family. Ning Ziyuan himself is also a commander of a border province. That's wonderful. They really have their eye on Feng Lu, then? Feng Yanfeng found it hard to believe. Had Feng Lu's ruined reputation not gotten out, then? Lady Wang gloated. I was told that Ning Chenxi fell in love with Xiao Lu as soon as he set eyes on her on their way back from the northern border to the imperial capital. He couldn't stop thinking about her, and it was like a lovesickness. He wants to marry no one but Xiao Lu. Feng Yanfeng sat up in excitement and smacked his own thigh. That's great news. Tell them tomorrow. No, Lady Wang shook her head. Ning Chenxi is so infatuated with Xiao Lu, that's what will seal the deal. If that's the case, we can't say yes so soon. Let's wait a few days. Feng Yanfeng found that suggestion reasonable. This was the perfect time to assume heirs. Good idea. Let the Ning family wait. Isn't that Ning Chenxi applying for Imperial College this year? We'll talk about the marriage proposal after he gets in. Lady Wang nodded with a smile. Lu Er is taking the exam this year as well. I don't know if she can get in. Lady Wang was a little concerned. Feng Lu's cultivation level wasn't advanced enough, but the clan had provided her with a lot of resources lately, and even the elders of the clan had offered to teach her themselves. In the end, they managed to elevate Feng Lu from level 7 to level 9, which qualified her for the exam. Go back to bed. We're taking Xiao Lu to Imperial College tomorrow morning for the exam, said Lady Wang. I hope Xiao Lu can get in this time. Based on the scores Feng Lu had been getting from the mock exam papers, Feng Yanfeng didn't think she stood too good a chance. Lady Wang snapped, of course Xiao Lu will get in. The clan has put in so much for her. It reminded Feng Yanfeng of Feng Wu back in the day, and he sighed with emotion. Come to think of it, Xiao Wu was really a genius back then. She was only 7 or 8 when she... Lady Wang wanted to tear the duvet to pieces with her teeth. Xiao Wu. She hated that name. She snorted. She was awesome back then, so what? She's a cripple without any trace of spiritual essence now. All she can do is be trampled on by our Xiao Lu. Feng Yanfeng heaved a sigh. What are you sighing for? Lady Wang smirked. Xiao Lu is taking the exam of Imperial College tomorrow. What can that Feng Wu do? She can't even set foot in the exam room. Feng Yanfeng had to agree with her. Meanwhile, in Fallen Star Yard, Yu Minji had left. Eager to act, he wanted to camp out in Imperial Capital Tower first and wait for that phenomenal duel. However, Chapter 576 taken. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan. Yu Minji is gone. Can you please leave now? After getting rid of Yu Minji, the Crown Prince finally cheered up a little, but what Feng Wu said displeased him right away. He glowered at Feng Wu with his cold, angry eyes. Who is he to you? Jun Linyuan's face was livid. No one. Then why did he show up here in the middle of the night? I don't need to answer to you. Speak. Jun Linyuan stared at her intensely. Feng Wu was furious. Who am I to you, then? Jun Linyuan smirked. Don't flatter yourself. You're nothing to me. Feng Wu snickered. Of course. We're nothing to each other. So, why did you kick open my door, enter my room, and won't leave? Jun Linyuan was rendered speechless. His eyes were like bottomless pits and he glared at Feng Wu, as if he wanted to eat her whole. Flames seemed to surge out of those grim eyes. He looked terrifyingly unapproachable. Anyone else would have dropped to their knees under such a stare. Even Yu Minji's legs almost gave out when Jun Linyuan stared at him like this. But not Feng Wu. She stood there proudly and unperturbed. She even looked back at Jun Linyuan with equally cold eyes. Her perfect composure and her unbending will were exactly why Feng thought that Feng Wu was the only right person for His Royal Highness on the entire continent. Feng Wu, how dare you speak to me like that? Jun Linyuan clenched his fists. And he smashed them down on the table. Crumble. The wooden table shattered into pieces and scattered all over the floor. Feng Wu didn't say anything. Feng Wu couldn't imagine what would happen if one of his fists had landed on her head. Staring at Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan moved closer and hemmed her in. Shit! Feng Wu had a bad feeling about this. If she let him corner her like before, he would do what he wanted with her again. She wouldn't let that happen. The closed window gave Feng Wu an idea. She bolted. Feng Wu was very fast, but Jun Linyuan was faster. Feng Wu had almost jumped out the window when Jun Linyuan caught Feng Wu's right foot with his right hand. Feng Wu was still wearing her fluffy homemade cotton slippers when he grabbed her by the ankle. She was wearing a loose-fitting casual dress at home with a fluffy robe over her shoulders. Feng Wu had designed the clothes herself and her beautiful mother made everything from scratch. It was an exquisite outfit. Caught by her right ankle, Feng Wu fell forward. However, before she smashed onto the window pane, Jun Linyuan tossed her upward. Everything was a blur all of a sudden. Before she realized it, Jun Linyuan had thrown her over his shoulder and jumped onto the roof. The next moment, he dashed out into the night, taking Feng Wu with him. Feng Wu. Houses flitted past them on both sides and the chilly night wind blew against her neck. Feng Wu was flabbergasted. She had been kidnapped. Jun Linyuan had taken her against her will. Where are you taking me? Put me down. Feng Wu was furious. She still had 10 books left to read. Although they were in her ring and she could take them out at any moment, she needed to first find the time to read them. Chapter 577. A Duel. Feng Wu could be a little obsessive at times. If 1,000 books had to be memorized, the thought of leaving one unread would keep her awake at night. Right now, she still had 10 more to go out of the extra 10,000 books on the reading list, and she was overwhelmed with anxiety. Put me down, I need to go read. Feng Wu was almost in tears. But Jun Linyuan moved as fast as a streak of lightning, even with Feng Wu over his shoulder, as if she was no heavier than a doll. Wind rushed down Feng Wu's throat whenever she tried to speak, so she eventually stopped trying, for there was no point. About an hour later, Feng Wu realized that the wind had stopped blowing and Jun Linyuan had stopped running. Put me down. Now. Feng Wu pounded his back with her little fists. This time, His Royal Highness, the emotionless iceberg, finally did as told. He put Feng Wu down on the ground. When he saw Feng Wu's disheveled hair, he narrowed his eyes a little. Feng Wu glowered at him. She was wearing loose-fitting, comfortable home clothes and her hair had been held up by just a single hairpin, which had obviously fallen out along the way. And Jun Linyuan had been running so fast that the wind had mussed up Feng Wu's hair. I've lost my hairpin. Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan accusingly. It's all your fault. Why did you bring me here in the middle of the night? Was she angry? Jun Linyuan frowned a little. He recalled what Feng Sun had told him. Need a place for a date? That's easy. Go to Lovebird Valley. You can talk about poems and life under the stars and the moon, and watch the sunrise together. So, Feng Sun had offered a really bad idea, hadn't he? The frown on Jun Linyuan's face grew bigger. Jun Linyuan pursed his lips and made a mental note that he would have a long chat with Feng Sun after he went back. You don't know why you're here. Jun Linyuan smirked. I brought you here so that you wouldn't hang out with that Minji. That reminded Feng Wu and she prompted Jun Linyuan, it's about time. Aren't the two of you going to duel on Imperial Capital Tower? Go ahead. Jun Linyuan snapped. What duel? He can cool his head on that tower tonight. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. At the same time. Up in Imperial Capital Tower. Minji had arrived at the scene early. It was a duel with Jun Linyuan and he had to prepare. Yu Minji had left Feng Manor in a hurry to consult his 3 elders. Elder 3 snorted. Imperial Capital Tower. His Royal Highness is too confident in himself. How so? Yu Minji asked in a hurry. Elder 3 lowered his voice and laid out his plan. Yu Minji's eyes sparkled. Great. That's a great idea. Ho ho, Jun Linyuan, you're not leaving that tower alive tonight. Hence, the 4 of them started preparations. They set up lead wires on Imperial Capital Tower, so that when the time came, they could attract a thunderbolt, burning Jun Linyuan to a crisp. At the thought of that fair-skinned Jun Linyuan turning into crispy bacon, Yu Minji couldn't help but guffaw. Once they were done with preparations, he stood on Imperial Capital Tower in the cold night wind. And it was really cold. In order not to raise any sort of alarm, the 3 elders retreated to make sure that Yu Minji was the only person within a 50 kilometers radius. Imperial Capital Tower was about 1,000 meters high. Chapter 578 Under the Moonlit Sky. There was nothing to shield one from the chilly wind-up on Imperial Capital Tower. SSSS. Yu Minji shivered in the cold. Up on the top floor, he looked into the distance and saw that it was pitch dark in the Imperial capital. The silver moon was behind thick clouds, revealing not a single trace of light. All the lights were out in the city down below. There wasn't a soul around, and the wind was blowing. It was miserable for Yu Minji, staying up there. 15 minutes passed. An hour. 2 hours. Yu Minji sat there with his arms around himself and trembled. But he was on the alert. After that last incident in northern border city where Jun Linyuan had stepped on his head, Yu Minji had learned his lesson. Despite shivering from head to toe in the chilly wind, he still looked around cautiously, fearing that Jun Linyuan might jump out of some dark corner and kick him down the tower. He could mistake every bush and tree for an enemy at the moment. At the same time, Lovebird Valley. Jun Linyuan was staring at Feng Wu unblinkingly. Feng Wu didn't know what to do with him. Are you sure you can stand Yu Minji up just like that? Jun Linyuan smirked. You care about him a lot, don't you? Feng Wu was speechless. The guy could distort everything that came out of her mouth and Feng Wu was exhausted. I want to go back. No. Jun Linyuan then dragged Feng Wu to a giant rock and made her sit down. Feng Wu said, I have an exam to take tomorrow. Can't you just let me go? God knew how hard Feng Wu had worked for that exam. To memorize those 1,000 books and read those 10,000 books, she had barely slept in the past 7 days. She almost didn't have time to eat and could only grab a bite while she was still reading. There were dark circles under Feng Wu's eyes. Jun Linyuan fixed his gaze on those circles. When was the last time she slept? Did she have to work that hard? Read more chapter on novel full. He was even angrier when he recalled that Yu Minji was taking the exam as well. If you want to take the exam so much, get the top score, then. He wanted to say something caring, but the words which came out were cold and relentless. Feng Wu glowered at Jun Linyuan. You know what? You have to get full marks. Feng Wu glowered at Jun Linyuan. In both the written exam and the physical tryout. Otherwise, say goodbye to your broken star piece. Jun Linyuan smirked. You're friends with Yu Minji, right? Get a higher score than him, and we'll see how friendly the 2 of you can be. Feng Wu said, Jun Linyuan, are you kidding me? Jun Linyuan looked back at her. Since when do I make jokes? Feng Wu clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles cracked. That was outrageous. Feng Wu took one deep breath after another, but still couldn't control her rage. She turned to leave. Leave now and you won't make it to the exam tomorrow. Jun Linyuan's eyes flickered. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu turned around and glared at Jun Linyuan. You just can't let a day pass without threatening someone, can you? Jun Linyuan snorted. I see you don't want that broken star piece anymore. Of course I do. And that was what pissed Feng Wu off the most. Fighting back her anger, she forced a smile. So, what are we doing here? Enjoying the cold wind? Jun Linyuan made Feng Wu sit down next to him and said grumpily, stay put. Chapter 579 Lean over. What now? To watch the sunrise. But the crown prince would never say those words. He thought that it would spoil his image. The dark clouds scattered and the silver moonlight poured down. Feng Wu was exasperated. She couldn't just sit around in silence. It was cold and it was a waste of her time. Feng Wu quietly took a book out of her pocket and began to read under the moonlight. She still had 10 more to go. She wouldn't have been so concerned, but now, Jun Linyuan had made it clear that she had to be the top student in the exam with full marks. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead and cursed Jun Linyuan in her head. The crown prince had no idea what was going on in Feng Wu's mind and went on picking on her. But, karma could be such a bitch. A few steps away, Feng said a silent prayer for his young master. Seeing that Feng Wu was reading again, Jun Linyuan flared up and snatched the book out of her hands. I'm right here and you're looking at a book instead of me? Feng Wu took a deep breath. Jun Linyuan, give me back my book. Jun Linyuan shook his head. Feng Wu exploded. What on earth do you want from me? You told me to get top marks, but won't let me read. And you've taken me here to do what? Enjoy the cold wind? You're making me take the exam, and now you're accusing me of thinking about nothing but the exam? Jun Linyuan, you're unbelievable. Feng Wu really had had enough of him. And she was seriously pissed. He had it coming. A few steps away, Feng gave Feng Wu a thumbs up in his head. Now that she had lost her temper, Jun Linyuan was intimidated. He bit his lower lip and his cheeks puffed out. Feng Wu snatched the book back and snapped at him, go away. I need to read. You're not going to sleep? Jun Linyuan asked in disappointment. Feng Wu said, I only have a few books left, and I can't sleep until I finish them all. She quickly flipped through the pages. And Jun Linyuan watched her as she read. Seeing her flushed cheeks and the way she huddled up in the cold wind, Jun Linyuan took off his thick cape and threw it over her shoulders. The longer he looked at the dark circles under her eyes, the angrier Jun Linyuan became. Was she ever going to sleep? She looked like a panda. Before he knew it, Jun Linyuan began to pity the girl. He opened his mouth and tried to tell her that she didn't have to be the top student or get full marks, but the proud crown prince couldn't bring himself to say those words. Under the warm cape, Feng Wu felt more and more sleepy. Her head nodded and she began to doze off. Jun Linyuan couldn't take it anymore. With a flick of his fingers, he hit Feng Wu in the acupoint which could make her fall asleep. The book fell from Feng Wu's hands and the girl, who hadn't slept properly in 7 days, crumpled to one side. Jun Linyuan caught Feng Wu in his arms before she hit the ground. The smell of the teenage girl filled his nostrils as he held her soft body. Her flawless face looked tiny under that big cape. Her fair skin was almost transparent, the outline of her chin was soft and delicate, and her lips were full and pink, which looked so yummy that he wanted to take a bite. Under the moonlight, Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu's face and was lost in her beauty. Before he knew it, he had leaned over. Chapter 580 Puffed up with arrogance. Feng Wu was woken up by the chirping of birds and the cries of insects. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, she yawned and opened her eyes. She was welcomed by the brilliant morning sun. The air was fresh, the grass verdant green, and there were splendid flowers everywhere. Feng Wu was bewildered. What was this place? She rubbed her eyes again and things began to come back to her. Last night, Jun Linyuan had snatched her, took off into the cold night, and ran all the way here to this valley. She recalled that she had a row with Jun Linyuan before returning to her reading under the moonlight. Then, she fell asleep. Feng Wu frowned. That didn't feel right. With her self-discipline, she wouldn't let herself go to sleep before she finished all her books. What happened last night? Just then, footsteps came from behind her. The person was very quiet, as if they were afraid to wake her up. Feng Wu raised her head and looked right into Jun Linyuan's brooding eyes. It happened so suddenly that he didn't have time to hide his emotions. Feng Wu could see them all in his eyes. However, Feng Wu was busy checking her sleep acupoint and failed to notice them. Jun Linyuan immediately shifted his gaze and turned his head away. If one were to look at him now, they would only see an indecipherable look in his eyes. He had a colorful chicken in one hand. A short distance away, a pot was being heated over a small fire. Seeing Feng Wu look his way, Jun Linyuan tossed the chicken at Feng Wu and casually said, "You lazy girl. It's time to make some breakfast." Feng Wu ignored the chicken and let it fall to the ground. She stared at Jun Linyuan with cold eyes as she seethed with anger. Seeing that Feng Wu was just standing there and sulking, Jun Linyuan frowned and looked back at her with his sharp eyes. "Jun Linyuan, it was you, wasn't it?" Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu tried her best to keep her anger at bay. "You hit my sleep acupoint last night, didn't you?" A grim look flickered in Jun Linyuan's eyes. "I've checked. There's a slight blockage in my sleep acupoint and you're the only one here that could have done that. Just admit it." Feng Wu flared up. She hadn't finished reading her books. How could he do such a thing? Feng Wu was practically spitting fire from her eyes. Jun Linyuan was angry and aggrieved. Read more chapter on novel full. He had done it because she looked so tired and he pitied her. What was wrong with that? The more Jun Linyuan thought about it, the angrier and more aggrieved he felt. However, he decided that a man shouldn't quibble with a woman over such petty things. Glaring at Feng Wu, he said, "Hurry up and cook the chicken. Do you want breakfast or not?" Feng Wu was too pissed to eat anything. Overwhelmed with rage, she could no longer think straight. She rushed over and kicked at the fire. Smack! The pot flew out and the half-cooked porridge splashed all over the ground. Jun Linyuan was dumbfounded. A few steps away, Feng was equally astonished. Miss Wu. Did she realize how difficult it was to make a pot of porridge in the middle of nowhere? As the top steward of the empire, he actually had to go back to the crown prince's residence before sunrise to fetch all the utensils. And His Royal Highness. That stove, the wooden frame, and the rice. His Royal Highness had prepared everything himself. Yes, Jun Linyuan had done all those things himself. The same Jun Linyuan that was known to be puffed up with arrogance. Chapter 581 So Mad. Other people would have passed out with joy if Jun Linyuan had started a conversation with them. And now, this was the first time His Royal Highness had ever cooked something himself. He hadn't even washed chopsticks for his grandmother, who had doted on him. But Miss Wu had kicked that pot of porridge to the ground. Feng broke out in a cold sweat of anxiety. As expected, Jun Linyuan's face turned livid and he stared at Feng Wu with a murderous look in his eyes. But Feng Wu was no less pissed than he was. "Jun Linyuan, how could you do this to me? How could you make me sleep? I haven't finished reading my books. What if I can't get first place or full marks? Your terms are already so harsh and you just keep making more trouble for me. I hate you." Feng Wu got angrier and more aggrieved as she spoke and tears began to well up in her pretty eyes. "I can forget about the books for now. Just tell me this, do you know that Imperial College's entrance exam is today?" The answer is obviously yes. "But you still brought me here against my will and left me in the middle of nowhere. Not only did I have to stand all the bug bites and the cold wind, I couldn't even read. And you made me sleep. Do you know what time it is now?" And do you know when the exam starts? It's almost 9 o'clock. It's 5 to 9 in the morning. And the exam starts at 9. How am I supposed to get there in time? The exam will probably be over when I get there. Jun Linyuan, you're the worst. Feng Wu was so mad and so aggrieved that she couldn't keep her tears back anymore. She turned to leave without giving Jun Linyuan any chance to explain himself. Jun Linyuan was astonished. He still stood there dazed after Feng Wu was gone. Your Royal Highness. Seeing Jun Linyuan's livid face, Feng quietly went up to his master. Jun Linyuan took a deep breath, but still couldn't hold back his anger. He kicked a giant oval rock. Rumble. The giant rock the size of a house instantly crumbled to pieces. Gesturing in the direction Feng Wu had left in, Jun Linyuan bellowed. I only made her sleep for her own good. She looked like a panda. Should I just do nothing? Reading in the moonlight? Has she lost her mind? Her eyes would be ruined. Feng rubbed his nose as his young master stomped his foot in rage. How was it my fault? I did nothing wrong. Jun Linyuan yelled at Feng. Nothing. Feng heaved a long sigh. Your Royal Highness, Miss Wu is really mad this time. Big deal. She's mad? I'm madder. Jun Linyuan said proudly. Miss Wu won't talk to you. And I won't talk to her either. This was the first time he had wanted to cook and he had actually taken action, but she had kicked the pot over. How dare she? She was so dead. The more Jun Linyuan thought about it, the more infuriated he became. His Royal Highness was hopeless. Feng sighed inwardly, but he still had to remind his master of something, or the young man would probably never find a girl. But Your Royal Highness, Miss Wu was right about one thing. Chapter 582. The exam starts when she arrives. You're the one forcing her to get into Imperial College, but you're the one making her miss the exam. You told her to get first place but stopped her from reading. You're making her get full marks, but prevented her from studying by making her sleep. Your Royal Highness, I would be very angry, too, if I were Miss Wu, said Feng in a serious tone. When Feng turned serious, things were really serious. So, Jun Linyuan straightened his back. Is it that serious? Yes, and probably more so than you think, Feng said earnestly. Miss Wu has put so much into this exam, she will only hate you more if she misses it. Your Royal Highness, do you want Miss Wu to hate you? Of course not. But, did that mean he was going to swallow that reprimand? Of course Jun Linyuan wouldn't have it. Feng said, Your Royal Highness, accounts can always be settled afterward, the priority now is the exam. Things should be taken care of in order of their importance and urgency. Feng had a point. Jun Linyuan rolled his eyes at Feng. Use your head. If she's running late, postpone the exam. Feng said, alright, to what time? Jun Linyuan rolled his eyes again. The exam will start when she arrives. Any questions? Feng gave his young master a strange look. If he cared about her so much, why did he have to be so mean when she was around and keep picking on her? Your Royal Highness, girls should be treated gently, Feng tried to talk sense into the crown prince. Jun Linyuan shifted his cold gaze to Feng and was back to his proud self again. Gently? She wishes. Feng almost burst out laughing, but he managed to keep his face unperturbed. Jun Linyuan snorted. She's not to be told about this. You'll have me to answer to if she knows I did this. Feng was speechless. Talk about doing exactly the opposite. Your Royal Highness, you're the perfect example. Feng was exhausted inside out. Not only did he have to arrange a secret escort to keep Feng Wu safe on her way back, he had to come up with a good excuse to delay the exam. Feng Wu had no idea of any of that, nor did she know about the conversation between Jun Linyuan and Feng. After storming off, she rushed all the way down the mountain and was dumbfounded. Which way was the city? Was she supposed to run all the way back? It was 9 o'clock already and the exam started at 9. Would she get there in time? Feng Wu searched her memory and recalled that it had taken Jun Linyuan almost an hour to arrive here last night. Feng Wu. It would be noon by the time she got back to the imperial capital. At that moment, Feng Wu was seriously considering murdering Jun Linyuan. She was overwhelmed by despair when clip-clop, she heard the sound of a horse coming her way from behind. Feng Wu turned around and her eyes lit up. Is that a galloping horse? The fastest horse ever. Feng Wu looked up at the rider and saw a teenager with fine features. He wore a fitting blue brocade robe and had an elegant air to him. Without thinking, Feng Wu grabbed the bridle and pushed the teenager out of the saddle. What? The elegant teenager had been arrested by Feng Wu's beautiful face as soon as he spotted her, and he was thinking. Chapter 583 Feng Wu the Robber. The nice-looking teenager had been reciting a poem about how the girl was so beautiful she was beyond description. However, the next moment, that genteel girl who looked softer and slimmer than a willow branch. She jumped up, kicked him out of the saddle, and robbed him of his horse. Not only that, she also tossed a spiritual stone onto his chest as if she was sending a beggar away. I'll take it. After that, with a clatter of hooves, the girl disappeared into the distance with the horse. The teenager was speechless. He was the son of an emperor, for Christ's sake. Spirit stones were the least of his concern. Feng Wu had no idea that she had just forced her offer on a royal prince. All she could think of was getting to Imperial College ASAP. The exam. Feng Wu was worried sick. After all the hard work and all the books she had read and recited, if her chance was ruined because she was late to the exam, she didn't think she would be able to take it. Hiya, faster. Blood rumbled in Feng Wu's ears and the wind grazed her cheeks like blades. All she could think of now was whether she could still go in when she arrived late. Chaoga should have gone in already, right? While Jun Linyuan was giving Feng Wu a hard time, Yu Minji had a rough night as well. He spent the whole night shivering on Imperial Capital Tower, jumping at every little noise. A wolf howled in the middle of the night and he thought it was Jun Linyuan coming. He almost jumped off the tower in fright. In the end, he was so cold that he had to catch the wolf, skin it, and turn it into a stew. However, he ate until the day broke and Jun Linyuan still didn't show up. Feng Wu rode the horse as fast as she could and it still took her 2 hours to get to town. By then, Feng Wu almost had a nervous breakdown. It was a 2-hour ride, which meant that it was 11 o'clock already. The exam would have finished by now. Feng Wu heaved a long sigh, but she wouldn't give up just yet and still rushed to Imperial College as soon as she could manage. However, she was astonished when she arrived at the square outside the college. What? That wasn't right. Why were there so many people? A lot of parents were here, but there were teenagers as well, who looked like exam candidates. Read more chapter on novel full. Jumping off the horse, Feng Wu grabbed the first person she saw and asked, "Has the exam started yet?" The person she asked was a teenager with delicate features. He was dazed by Feng Wu's beauty when he saw her face. Involuntarily, he blushed and lowered his gaze. However, he then spotted Feng Wu's fluffy pajamas and her fluffy slippers. He raised his head in astonishment and looked at her strangely. "Answer me. Has the exam started yet?" Feng Wu glared at him. "Oh, right," the teenager came back to himself and replied. "No, it hasn't." "How come? Shouldn't it have started like 2 hours ago?" Feng Wu's eyes widened in surprise. In that moment, all her anxiety was gone, turning into curiosity instead. Before the teenager could answer, a teenage girl moved closer and said, "Right? It should have started a long time ago, but the exam got postponed." Chapter 584. It's all because of you. When will the exam resume, then? Feng Wu was thrilled. Holy crap. Someone up there must really like her. Otherwise, why would such a thing happen? She was late and so was the exam. Ha 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 ha. In that moment, Feng Wu was so excited that she wanted to guffaw. It had to be the luckiest day of her life. We have no idea. The girl was very enthusiastic and seemed to make friends quickly. She added, we don't know if the exam will resume today. We may have to come back tomorrow. By the way, do you know why the exam was postponed? The girl moved closer, lowered her voice, and blinked at Feng Wu. Why? Feng Wu asked curiously. I heard that it was because Mr. Lu was assassinated, the girl whispered. The boy shook his head. How does that have anything to do with our exam? Who knows? No one has told us anything, anyway, nor do we know when the exam will start. The girl frowned, then her eyes lit up. Hey, what are your names? I'm Yi Qing. Nice to meet you. I'm Zhao Shu, said the boy quietly. Feng Wu, said Feng Wu. It had been 5 years since Feng Wu enjoyed her fame, so that name didn't raise an alarm. Yi Qing grinned. Feng Wu. Where have I heard that name before? Right, there was this golden girl who had that name as well. Guess what? I used to live in her shadow when I was little. Did you? Feng Wu rubbed her nose. Zhao Shu and Yi Qing both had something to say on the matter. Zhao Shu sighed. That's right. Back then, Feng Wu meant so much. All the boys used to stand in His Royal Highness's shadow and all the girls in Feng Wu's. Yi Qing nodded. I really liked Feng Wu and I can't stop wondering what happened to her. Come to think of it, those people out there are so awful. Feng Wu has to be the one who suffered the most from losing her ability, she was the victim, for God's sake. But the only thing those people did was add insult to injury and scoff at her. Shame on them. Zhao Shu said, but didn't they say that Feng Wu crippled herself because she got greedy in her cultivation? Yi Qing snorted. And you believe that? Plus, so what if she lost her ability because she tried to move past her limits? Everyone wants to become better and stronger. Since when was that a crime? Zhao Shu rubbed his nose. I didn't say she did anything wrong. Since the exam hadn't started, Feng Wu found a corner to take off her pajamas and change into a simple pale blue outfit instead. She wandered around, looking for Chaoga, but the latter was nowhere to be seen. She was sure that Chaoga had to be looking for her as well. At that moment, outside the gate of Imperial College, Mr. Lu's stately figure showed up in front of everyone. Mr. Lu. It's Mr. Lu. Everyone began to shout and cry when they saw Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu, why is the exam postponed? Mr. Lu, when will the exam begin? Mr. Lu. The crowd kept pushing forward and the slim Feng Wu ended up at the front. Chapter 585. The exam starts now. Someone bumped into Feng Wu and almost pushed her out of the line. Mr. Lu noticed Feng Wu when he turned to look that way. He heaved a sigh of relief when he recognized her. And the look he gave her was full of grievance. Before, he actually had no idea when to start the exam, but as soon as he spotted Feng Wu, Mr. Lu knew that he could make the announcement now. He gave Feng Wu another aggrieved and accusing look, which gave Feng Wu the creeps. What was that about? Mr. Lu waved his hand. We can proceed with the exam now. Line up for inspection. The exam starts in an hour. He turned to leave after another wave of his hand. What a day. Now, he had to go to court to explain everything to His Majesty. Delaying the national exam was too big a deal even for the head of Imperial College to do without a good reason. At that thought, Mr. Lu gave Feng Wu an aggrieved look for the third time today. Feng Wu didn't say anything. That felt so weird. Duan Chaoga, why are you here? There came a shrill voice. Feng Wu was looking for Chaoga herself. Hearing that voice, she immediately rushed in that direction. In the center of the crowd, holding 2 sets of stationery in her hands, Chaoga was glaring at someone opposite her. And they were people Feng Wu had met recently, Chaoga's 2 elder half-sisters Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue. 7 days ago, Duan Chaoga was taken and Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue got beaten up. That day, the 2 sisters stopped their father from looking for Chaoga. That was to say, the Duan family abandoned Duan Chaoga. The 2 sisters were certain that Duan Chaoga would die a miserable death after being snatched. Little did they expect her to show up here. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be dead by now? Duan Chaoyin frowned and stared at Chaoga contemptuously. Chaoga smirked. You really want me dead, don't you? Well, you're not getting what you want. You'll have to die first. How dare you talk to your big sister like that? My big sister wants me dead. I've got even worse things to say. Chaoga snorted. Duan Chaoyin was furious. What had happened to Chaoga? She used to be such a dumb girl and never talked back. All she did was try to fight back physically, but she wasn't their match and would always end up miserable. But now, Chaoga. Just then, Feng Wu arrived at Chaoga's side. Hearing that voice, Chaoga turned around and spotted Feng Wu. She was over the moon. Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu. Chaoga jumped at Feng Wu and flung her arms around the latter. Xiao Wu, you're finally back. Sob, I woke up this morning to find the window open, but you were nowhere to be seen. I was so worried. Are you here alone? No, everyone is here and they're out looking for you. Uncle Chiu said that I would be late for the exam if we waited for you at home, so we all came here to look for you. You're really here, Sob. Chaoga was so glib and quick to react when Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue gave her attitude, but she was almost in tears when she finally saw Feng Wu. Her biggest fear was finally gone. Silly girl. Feng Wu rubbed her head. Just then, they heard a contemptuous voice. Xiao Wu. As in Feng Wu. Duan Chaoyin snickered. She then scrutinized Feng Wu with a smirk on her face. Chapter 586. Kneel and apologize. Feng Wu had no intention of talking to them. Taking Chaoga's hand, she was going to leave, but so, you're Feng Wu. Duan Chaoyin said loudly. Going up to Feng Wu and walking around her, Duan Chaoyin smacked her lips. You really are as pretty as they say. Good job. Feng Wu considered the 2 sisters a joke and she was going to lead Chaoga out of the crowd. It would be a waste of her life to talk to them. Feng Wu, do you know that Duan Chaoga was poisoned? Do you know that her cultivation level dropped? Do you know she was kidnapped? Do you know that her engagement was cancelled? Do you know? The noise over here soon attracted some attention. Feng Wu frowned. Duan Chaoyin wanted to humiliate Chaoga in front of everyone. Smack! There came the sound of a hard slap. It was quick and accurate and Duan Chaoyin spun around at the impact. She was dumbfounded. She was slapped. By a cripple. Feng Wu. You're dead. Duan Chaoyin wanted to jump at Feng Wu and tear her to pieces, but Feng Wu. What are you doing here? A voice came from behind them. Turning around, Feng Wu saw the face of her all-time enemy. Lady Wang was here. Lady Wang had accompanied Feng Lu here for the exam today. She was drawn over by the hubbub of voices, but she spotted Feng Wu among the crowd. She frowned and gave Feng Wu a dangerous look. Read more chapter on novel full. The Duan family recognized Lady Wang. Duan Chaoyin's mother was actually quite familiar with Lady Wang, for they would often meet at social events. Mrs. Duan pointed at Feng Wu in fury and said to Lady Wang, "Is she that Feng Wu from your family? What kind of upbringing did she have? How could she hit another person in public?" Is that how the Fong clan teaches their children? Give me an explanation or I'll never let this drop. The exam was about to start and many people were here. The place was packed. Around them, all eyes were on Feng Wu now. Lady Wang's face darkened. She glared at Feng Wu and took a deep breath. Why are you here? This isn't the right place for you. Feng Lu's eyes went bloodshot red when she saw Feng Wu. The look in her eyes was as cold as ice. Feng Wu, I feel so ashamed to share the same surname with you. Immediately, many scoffed at Feng Wu. A girl next to Feng Lu tugged at her sleeve and whispered, Feng Lu, isn't she here to see you off? Feng Lu smirked. See me off? You think too highly of my sister here. She hates me so much. Why would she do that? What's she doing here, then? How should I know? To admire us for being able to apply for Imperial College, probably. After all, she's a cripple with no spiritual essence at all. Feng Lu shrugged. The onlookers all smirked at Feng Wu. The look on Lady Wang's face turned grimmer and she bellowed at Feng Wu, you shouldn't be here. You're not qualified for the exam and you'll only bring shame to the family. Get lost. Now. Mrs. Duan snorted. Really? Get lost? Did my Chowyin just get hit for nothing? Mrs. Duan, how do you want this to be handled, then? Lady Wang took a deep breath. She felt so humiliated in front of so many people and she wanted this to go away ASAP. Chapter 587 Ha 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 ha, she must kneel and apologize. Mrs. Duan was anything but forgiving and she demanded that Feng Wu get down on her knees. Chaoga smirked. Forget about the apology already. And kneel? Who the hell do you think you are? Duan Chaoga. Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue bellowed in unison. They never knew that Duan Chaoga could be this daring. Oh my, what's going on? Why is everyone here? This looks fun. A pretentious, cloying voice came from a short distance away. And everyone turned to look. Isn't that Princess Mu? It was indeed Mu Yao Yao, the daughter of the Mu mansion. Wow, it's Princess Mu. Grand Secretary Fang's granddaughter. Grand Secretary Fang is one of the 7 members of the Education Board. Although he didn't design the questions this time, he's done so a few times in the past. So, Princess Mu has an advantage this time, right? Many eyed Mu Yao Yao expectantly, as if wanting to pry her head open to have a look inside. Some even called out, Princess Mu, do you know what we're going to be tested on? Mu Yao Yao rolled her eyes grumpily. She didn't like that question at all. She had thought that Grand Secretary Fang being her grandfather, she was sure to get in. All she needed was a little hint from the old man. However, to her utmost surprise, Grand Secretary Fang wasn't her grandfather at all. Well, at least he was her granduncle, wasn't he? However, the old man wouldn't tell her anything, let alone the actual exam questions, while the others just assumed that she knew everything. Mu Yao Yao had come to the exam in a foul mood. When she heard that Feng Wu was getting laughed at here, she came as soon as she could. Why, isn't it Feng Wu, the once genius of the Feng family and a useless piece of shit now? Why do you have to come here on such a joyful day? You're only bringing humiliation to yourself, you know. Mu Yao Yao grinned at Feng Wu and gave the latter a contemptuous look. Seeing that Mu Yao Yao was rather hostile to Feng Wu, both the Duan and Feng families let out a breath of relief. Before Feng Wu could say anything, a voice came from the front of the crowd. All candidates, stand in a line on the left and all family members should make their way to the back. Now. The inspection was going to start now. However, to everyone's surprise, Feng Wu and Chaoga went to join the line as well. Mu Yao Yao grabbed Chaoga right away. Hey, you two. Get back there. This is where the candidates line up. Feng Wu was a cripple and Chaoga a fool. There was no way that they were candidates. Mu Yaoyao made sure that her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Many looked back and smirked at Feng Wu and Chaoga. Feng Wu kept her composure and remained unperturbed. Chaoga, on the other hand, couldn't take it anymore. She yelled, "Why should we? We're here to take the exam." Mu Yaoyao guffawed. So did Duan Chaoyin. And Feng Lu. And everyone else. Anyone who had the tiniest amount of cultivation could tell that Feng Wu had no spiritual essence. She was just a commoner. Take the entrance exam of Imperial College? She had to be joking. Mu Yaoyao pressed her hands to her stomach and laughed until she was in tears. Oh God. Seriously, Feng Wu, can you be any more ridiculous? You? Imperial College? Ha ha ha. Chapter 588 How bold of you to stay. Feng Lu was also laughing so hard that she was in tears. Oh God, that has to be the funniest thing I've ever heard. Ha ha ha, Feng Wu is going to Imperial College. Ha ha ha. Duan Chaoyue and Duan Chaoyin were also cracking up. There's no way that Chaoga is qualified to take the exam. Do you know how much her cultivation level dropped by? She's only a level 6 now. The prerequisite for the entrance exam was level 9. Why are these people so annoying? Zhao Shu and Yi Qing, who were slightly further ahead, turned around at the noise. They then saw those people laughing at Feng Wu. Yi Qing sighed. I didn't know that she was that Feng Wu. After 5 years, she's. But even if that's the case, they shouldn't laugh at her like that. The queue was moving forward at a quick pace. One would show their exam permit for inspection. Once it was verified and the candidate was cleared of any cheating materials, they were given permission to go in. Feng Wu and Chaoga were in the same line and the inspector worked efficiently. In less than 15 minutes, it was their turn. By then, Mu Yaoyao had almost given herself cramps from all the laughing. Ha ha ha, Feng Wu, how bold of you, staying in that line just to save face. There were 2 lines in total. Mu Yaoyao had deliberately stayed by Feng Wu's side and kept taunting the latter as they moved forward. However, Feng Wu didn't even look at her during the process. It was as if Mu Yaoyao didn't exist. But Mu Yaoyao wouldn't let it drop. Feng Wu had endured everything so that she could get back at them when the time was right. At the same time. Lovebird Valley. Once Feng had taken care of everything as the Crown Prince commanded, he went back to his young master. Your Royal Highness, it's been taken care of. Miss Wu has arrived at Imperial College, reported Feng. I see, Jun Linyuan said in an indifferent tone. Putting his hands behind his back, he looked at the view in the valley. Your Royal Highness, said Feng casually, they were laughing at Miss Wu. What? Jun Linyuan frowned and turned his piercing gaze on Feng. They were laughing at Miss Wu for showing up at the exam without any cultivation ability. Your Royal Highness, will they bully Miss Wu? Jun Linyuan's back stiffened. I hope they won't give Miss Wu a hard time for the exam permit. Your Royal Highness, Your Royal Highness. Feng watched as his young master charged down the slope. He ran so fast. Thump. He smashed into a tree and the tree was in pieces. With a wave of his hand, Jun Linyuan leveled a small hill flat. When Feng saw him again, Jun Linyuan was at the foot of the mountain. Feng went after his master in a hurry. Before long, Jun Linyuan arrived at Imperial College. It had taken him about an hour to take Feng Wu out there on his shoulder, but he used less than 10 minutes to get back to town. He was this fast when he was furious. As it turned out, he had taken a detour when he took Feng Wu out last night. But Feng Wu didn't know that. It was her turn to be inspected at the moment. The inspector was a female teacher whom Feng Wu hadn't met before. Feng Wu handed her the red booklet, then went to stand on a low stone platform, where she would be searched. What? The inspector narrowed her eyes in a dangerous manner when she saw Feng Wu's exam permit. You. Staring at Feng Wu, the teacher raised the exam permit. Come here. Feng Wu was bewildered. Why? Chapter 589 Banned from Imperial College for Life. Why? The teacher smirked. Do you not know why I told you to step down from there? I don't. Feng Wu looked innocently confused. By then, they had attracted everyone's attention. You don't know. You forged an exam permit. Stop telling me you don't know in that innocent voice. The teacher's face was livid. Immediately, everyone behind Feng Wu cried out in surprise. Forge an exam permit? No kidding. Is that even doable? That's so bold of her. Forging an exam permit? Looking at Feng Wu, Mu Yao Yao laughed until she was in tears. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, Feng Wu, that's why you dared to join the line. You forged an exam permit, ha 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 ha. Instantly, all eyes were on the red booklet in the teacher's hand. The teacher cast a stern look at Feng Wu, then turned to Chaoga. Your exam permit, please. Chaoga handed the teacher her exam permit. Another red booklet. The teacher was furious. You two are in it together, aren't you? How dare you? The teacher thought that her head was going to explode with fury. Ha ha ha. Both Duan Chaoyue and Duan Chaoyin guffawed. They knew it. There was no way that Duan Chaoge would qualify to take the exam. That girl was a fool. That's it. The two of them forged their exam permits together. That's why they've been sticking with each other. They're in this silly scam together. What were they thinking? If they had to forge one, why didn't they make it green? How can they be so stupid? Mrs. Duan gave Lady Wang a taunting look. I see that's how the Feng clan teaches their daughters. That's an eye-opener. Lady Wang was infuriated. That Feng Wu was bringing shame down on the entire clan. Where are their parents? Quickly, take these two students away. The teacher exchanged looks with Mu Yao Yao when no one was looking and raised her voice in an arrogant manner. They're banned from applying to Imperial College for life. Wow! Everyone cried out in surprise. Isn't that a bit too much? Banned for life? Their futures will be ruined. Future recruits for the political and military circles were almost all graduates of Imperial College. The teacher smirked. Too much. It's all there in the school regulations, rule number 53. I'm only enforcing the regulations. She then added, let me have a look at the names. Feng Wu of the Feng clan and Duan Chaoge of the Duan family, is it? Where are the people of the Feng and Duan families? Take them back now. Stop humiliating yourselves here. The teacher was puffed up with arrogance. For Mu Yao Yao had promised the teacher, who was called Jin Li, a huge sum of money in return, if Jin Li could embarrass Feng Wu in front of everyone. Lady Wang and Mrs. Duan exchanged looks, and both saw humiliation in each other's eyes. Why, Mrs. Feng, is it? Feng Wu is a daughter of your family, isn't she? Take her back now and teach her well. Virtue, not cultivation, should be the most important quality for a person. Chapter 590 Oh God! What's happening? Lady Wang was seriously considering killing Feng Wu there and then. Oh my, isn't it Mrs. Duan? Duan Chaoge is your daughter, right? She's the daughter of my husband's concubine. Mrs. Duan could barely keep her smile on. That still makes her your daughter. Mrs. Duan, you shouldn't focus on your own daughter and ignore your stepdaughter. Otherwise, you'll be criticized for favoritism. Mrs. Duan was speechless. She made a mental note that she would teach Duan Chaoge a good lesson after they got back, give her a good whipping, to start with. As fellow sufferers of humiliation, Lady Wang and Mrs. Duan couldn't shirk their responsibilities anymore and had to come forward. Jean Li watched as the two ladies introduced themselves as Feng Wu's aunt and Duan Chaoga's stepmother respectively. Jean Li snorted. Take them back home now. They're only going to bring shame to themselves and your families here. Yes, of course. Lady Wang and Mrs. Duan gritted their teeth, but had no choice but to smile obsequiously. Lady Wang went up to Feng Wu, grabbed the latter by her sleeve, and said in a low, intimidating voice, Feng Wu, are you done making a joke of yourself here? Go back home with me right this instant. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment and said earnestly, no, I won't. Lady Wang almost had a heart attack. How can you be so shameless? Your scam has failed and these people are all laughing at you. You're bringing shame down on the entire Feng clan. Go back home. Now. She then tried to drag Feng Wu away. But she couldn't make Feng Wu move an inch. Feng Wu looked at her innocently. What scam? My permit is genuine. Chaoga was also yelling at the top of her lungs. My permit is real. Like, it can't be any more real than this. Why are you saying that we forged them? Are you blind or something? Many onlookers watched with open mouths. Mu Yaoyao herself was cracking up. Ha 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 ha, I've never met someone as shameless as you two. Your scam has already failed and you're still sticking to your lie. That's just, ha ha ha. At Mu Yaoyao's words, many followed suit and began to laugh as well. Jean Lin's face was livid. I've received the instruction from Mr. Liu that the exam will start in 15 minutes. Feng Wu, Duan Chaoga, are you not going to leave willingly? Fine. I hereby condemn these two people for disturbing order on the day of the exam. Take them down and lock them up in the dungeon. We'll deal with them later. Imperial College came with its own jail. Four stalwart men appeared from behind Jean Li, and all with bulging muscles, which was a clear sign of their considerable physical strength. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and her lips curled into a dangerous smile. This teacher had been pushing her limits for so long that she left Feng Wu with no choice but to teach her a lesson. However, before Feng Wu could do anything, boom. A gust of wind blew across the square. Clouds of sand rose up and pebbles skittered across the ground. The air became so dusty that people had a hard time keeping their eyes open. There was a frightening energy around them. Oh God! What was happening? As a matter of fact, Jun Linyuan had arrived. He had run as fast as he could like a streak of lightning. However, he slowed down once he reached the front gate of Imperial College. Clearing his throat, he put his hands behind his back and strolled into the courtyard. Feng walked behind him. Because all eyes were on Feng Wu at the moment and everyone was ready to see her bring shame upon herself. Chapter 591. Is Feng Wu doomed? Seeing this, the crown prince's face turned livid and a frighteningly cold air began to come off him. Once he was angry, sand and pebbles were blown into the air, an intimidating energy filled the courtyard, and everyone was overwhelmed by a sense of foreboding. No one knew who turned their heads first. Shit! Oh my God! It's His Royal Highness. The Crown Prince. He's here. Some of the people here had seen Jun Linyuan's face before, but for most of them, this was the first time they had ever met the Crown Prince in person. Turning around, they saw a stunning teenager with cold, brooding eyes, and the air he gave off only showed how unapproachable he was. The teenager was anything but attainable. Even his most casual glance was a demonstration of what an invincible ruler he would be one day. Your Royal Highness. Everyone began to drop to their knees. It wasn't just because he was the honorable Crown Prince, but because he was unparalleled in his capability. They wholeheartedly worshipped him for his martial prowess. Thump! 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 As Jun Linyuan walked in, everyone went down on their knees and prostrated on the granite pavement. Even the lofty teachers of Imperial College bowed to him. Jean Li, who had been humiliating Feng Wu with all her might, knelt down as well. Not only was she in charge of the inspection, she was also the form teacher of the first-year students. Lady Wang knelt down. Read more chapter on novel full. So did Feng Lu. And Mu Yao Yao. And everyone else but Feng Wu. Chaoge was also intimidated by Jun Linyuan's authoritative air, but Feng Wu was standing there with her chin raised. Chaoge had no choice but to stand next to Feng Wu, though her legs trembled. Jun Linyuan headed directly for Feng Wu and his cold gaze locked on her. Although Mu Yao Yao was on her knees, she was over the moon. Feng Wu, aren't you in love with His Royal Highness? Well, this is the most humiliating moment of your life and His Royal Highness is here to witness everything. I bet you want to kill yourself now. With her head lowered, Mu Yao Yao gloated to herself. Many people were frowning at Feng Wu. She wasn't kneeling. Who did she think she was? Little Feng Wu, you're in trouble again. Jun Linyuan sounded rather impatient and he was frowning. Feng Wu was vexed. She found it rather strange herself. After everything Mu Yao Yao and the others said, she hadn't felt a thing. However, that single sentence from Jun Linyuan could make her lose her temper. Feng Wu snorted, turned her head the other way, and ignored Jun Linyuan. Oh God! Many were stealing glances in her direction, and were speechless to see how arrogant she was. Please. You're in the presence of His Royal Highness. As in Jun Linyuan, the Crown Prince. He's one of the most respected men of the Empire, the most promising teenager, and the best of his generation. You're nothing but someone without spiritual essence, a forger, and a morally compromised girl. How dare you ignore His Royal Highness? You're so dead. Jun Linyuan snickered. Why, you're taking it out on me now. Everyone felt chills down their spines at those words. Oh God. Feng Wu was really doomed this time. Many broke into a cold sweat, but they couldn't help but admire her. She actually had the guts to lose her temper at His Royal Highness. Although she would probably die the next moment, but that was still very brave of her. However, Feng Wu only turned around, stared at Jun Linyuan with her beautiful eyes, and smirked. Chapter 592 What's happening to this world? Putting her hands behind her back and sticking out her chest, Feng Wu darted a look at Jun Linyuan. You know, you're not the only one who has a temper, Your Royal Highness. Other people have emotions, too. You're not that unique. Everyone on their knees was astonished at Feng Wu's words. Feng Wu was so. Did she have a death wish? Did she have any idea who she was talking to? Wait, she had addressed him as, Your Royal Highness, so she must know that he was Jun Linyuan. But she still said what she had, knowing that she was talking to His Royal Highness. Had she given up hope altogether because she knew she was doomed? Jun Linyuan looked down at Feng Wu. The girl had gotten bolder. With her chin raised, she reminded him of a little peacock, which was so adorable. Despite how he felt inside, Jun Linyuan kept his face grim and smirked at the teachers of Imperial College. What's going on? He still hadn't throttled Feng Wu. Well, it would happen soon enough. Kneeling on the ground, Jin Li was gloating inwardly, but she kept a straight face. Your Royal Highness, this girl is called Feng Wu and she's a cripple with no spiritual essence. However, she forged an exam permit and tried to sneak into the exam room. I caught her in action. Forging the exam permit for Imperial College is a heinous crime. She has to be punished as a warning to others. Jin Li smiled maliciously. What do you think the proper punishment is, then? Jun Linyuan shifted his brooding gaze to Jin Li. His Royal Highness was speaking to her. Jin Li was so excited that even her voice trembled. She suddenly recalled something. His Royal Highness had been engaged to Feng Wu once. Although the engagement was called off, their names had still been mentioned together. Thus, His Royal Highness must hate Feng Wu so much for putting Jin Li in such a predicament. At that thought, Jinli glanced at Mu Yaoyao, who nodded back at her. That gave Jinli the support she needed. She said loudly, I think, a death penalty is the most appropriate. That shocked everyone. Death penalty? Wasn't that a bit too much? Lady Wang and the others were thrilled at that statement. The death penalty. Ha ha ha. Was Feng Wu really going to be killed to set an example? If Feng Wu was dead. Lady Wang had never felt so satisfied. That would be wonderful. Standing next to Jun Linyuan, Feng was speechless when he looked at the crowd, as if they were the biggest idiots in the world. Death penalty? You people must have lost your minds. Just then, wait. Mr. Liu, who had just gotten wind of the news, hurried into the courtyard. After taking in the situation, he was utterly befuddled. He stared at Jinli. What did you just say? Seeing Mr. Liu, Jinli said in a hurry, Feng Wu should receive the death penalty for her crime. Mr. Liu didn't know what to say. Before he could ask, Jinli began to tell him what happened. Mr. Liu was even more bemused. You're saying that little Feng Wu's exam permit is fake? Mr. Liu cried out in surprise and looked at the young teacher strangely. Yes, sir. Jinli had no idea what a fool she was making of herself, and she actually handed Feng Wu's and Chaoga's exam permits to Mr. Liu. She even mumbled, that's a terrible replica, anyway. You can tell that it's fake at first glance. Mr. Liu didn't know what to say. Chapter 593 How Terrifying. As if she hadn't said enough, Jinli went on telling Feng Wu off. Sir, this Feng Wu girl is so arrogant. She was very disrespectful toward His Royal Highness. Mr. Liu didn't know what to say. He looked at Feng Wu and His Royal Highness in turn. The principal of Imperial College was anything but dumb. Mr. Liu had long seen through everything. He began to suspect it when His Royal Highness picked on Feng Wu, but Feng Wu was able to turn things around after a single visit to the Crown Prince's residence. Then, this morning, this national exam had been postponed for Feng Wu. When he asked what happened and when the exam could begin, what did Feng tell him? Don't ask. As for when to start, well, it'll start when Miss Wu gets here. Miss Wu, as in Miss Feng Wu here, right? Mr. Liu had to go to court and report to His Majesty just then. He was only gone for a minute and little Feng Wu had been put through all this. Mr. Liu stole a glance at Jun Linyuan. The Crown Prince, who never let his face betray anything, looked darker than a stormy day at the moment. The more Jinli said, the grimmer the look on His Royal Highness's face. Mr. Liu didn't need to ask another question. He cut her off. You fool. Jinli was cracking up inwardly. Ha 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 ha. Mr. Liu just called Feng Wu a fool. Feng Wu is so dead. However, Jinli was still gloating when Mr. Liu waved his hand. Take her down. Mr. Liu was pointing at Jinli, instead of Feng Wu or Chaoga. Jinli was dumbfounded. What? Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu. Imperial College had its own impressive guards. 2 guards showed up at the command and charged at Jinli. Jinli looked shocked. Why are you after me? Why me? Take Feng Wu down. She's right there. At the same time, many looked at Mr. Liu in astonishment. That was right. Shouldn't they be after Feng Wu? This had to be a mistake. Mr. Liu. Why me? Why? Jinli struggled violently. Mr. Liu stole another glance at Jun Linyuan and saw that the latter had cheered up a little. So, the female teacher had really pissed His Royal Highness off. Mr. Liu smirked. Who told you that her exam permit was fake? What? 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 That statement shocked everyone. Did Mr. Liu say that her exam permit isn't fake? Does that mean that Feng Wu's exam permit is genuine? But hers is red and ours are green. Meanwhile, Jean Li was even more confused. Feng Wu's exam permit was a real one. No. It couldn't be. Jean Li stared at Mu Yao Yao in disbelief. It was Mu Yao Yao who had given her the instruction to humiliate Feng Wu in front of everyone. Oh God, that exam permit was real. That meant, everything she had said and done was. Chapter 594 Things never went as planned. At that thought, Jean Li almost fainted. She wasn't the only one shocked. Feng Lu, Lady Wang, Mrs. Duan, Duan Chaoyue, Duan Chaoyin, and many others were all watching what was happening in disbelief. That exam permit was legit? Feng Wu really had an exam permit? No, it can't be. How can she have one? She has no spiritual essence at all. She's just a crip dash. An idea came to Jean Li all of a sudden. She remembered the exemption rule of Imperial College. She got recommendations from 3 members of the education board. That reminded everyone else. That was right. If that exam permit was authentic, that was the only possibility. But it can't be. Feng Wu is useless. How could she have persuaded 3 elders? I don't believe it. Oh God, it just occurred to me. That exemption indeed comes with a red exam permit. No way. Is Feng Wu that well connected? Maybe the bosses still see some hope in her and think that she can get her abilities back with a little push. You know what? So what if Feng Wu has a real exam permit? Does she have spiritual essence? You're so right. Seeing that His Royal Highness was losing his patience, Mr. Lu waved at the teachers. What are you waiting for? Go back to your inspection. Yes, of course. The inspection went on smoothly. Soon, Feng Wu and Chaoge entered the exam hall. Chaoge was displeased and kept grumbling. How stupid can those people be? Would anyone trying to forge an exam permit make it red? Feng Wu chuckled. What are you mumbling about there? Chaoge frowned. I'm just pissed. Did we get insulted for nothing? Feng Wu smiled. It won't be for nothing. Huh? Chaoge looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Xiao Wu, are you going to beat them up? Let's start with some face slapping. But how? You'll see. Feng Wu found her seat according to the number on her exam permit. The exam hall was actually an open space. 100 candidates were arranged in a 10 by 10 square. Feng Wu sat in the first row of the 5th column. And an invigilator sat right in front of her. Feng Wu's stomach sank. Luckily, as the other exemption, Chaoge sat right next to her. Chaoge's seat was on Feng Wu's right. That was to say, Chaoge was the first in the 6th column. Chaoge didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the seating arrangement. To their frustration, sitting in the first row, they were right under the invigilators' noses. The bright side was that they weren't too far apart. At least they were still in the same exam hall. Just then, Chaoge tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve. Xiao Wu. Feng Wu looked back at Chaoge, knowing perfectly well that Chaoge's answers would be hopeless. Grand Secretary Feng suffered from the threat of a stroke every time he corrected Chaoge's exam paper. It always took him a long time to calm down, and in the end, he just let Chaoge go out and play on her own. Just then, other candidates began to enter the hall. Each hall contained 100 candidates, but somehow, almost everyone Feng Wu knew was in this one. Especially Duan Chaoyin, who sat right behind Feng Wu. And Duan Chaoyue right behind Chaoge. And Chapter 595 Xiao Wu is more amazing than you can imagine. Duan Chaoyue and Duan Chaoyin weren't the only acquaintances here. Feng Wu recognized Yi Yifei's minions as well, for she had met them at World Tower before. They were Hui Yin, Wen Ling, Lu Hao, and Mu Qing. Mu Yao Yao was here, too. She sat on Feng Wu's left, the first seat in the fourth column. Behind her was Yao Hao and Yao Ying, the siblings Feng Wu had met at Grand Secretary Fang's place. What was more, Ning Chenxi was also here. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Apparently, apart from Yu Minji, everyone was here. Chaoge looked at Feng Wu and wanted to say something, but couldn't. Feng Wu had told her before that she would find a way to let Chaoge copy her answers. But with all these people here, they would be closely watched on all sides. What should they do now? Ha, Duan Chaoge, there you are. Duan Chaoyin gave Duan Chaoge a contemptuous look. As her sister, Duan Chaoyin knew Duan Chaoge's abilities too well. Most of the candidates here had had a normal education since they were little, making their way through the junior and intermediate schools before moving on to the senior one, which was Imperial College here. However, Feng Wu and Chaoge were the only exceptions, for they had never graduated from the junior school, nor had they attended the intermediate one. Chaoge would have exploded at Duan Chaoyin's provocation on any other day, but now, she only buried her head in her hands and rested her elbows on the desk with a long face. What was she supposed to do with this exam? Xiao Wu would get admitted to Imperial College and she would be turned down. And the distance between herself and Xiao Wu would only grow further and further. Oh God! In terms of her cultivation level, she was qualified to apply, but she was so lopsided in her theoretical knowledge. Books were like lullabies to her. Seeing that Chaoge wouldn't reply, Duan Chaoyin smirked. Duan Chaoge, I'd leave this instant if I were you. Chaoge still wouldn't reply. Duan Chaoyin snorted. After all, it would be so humiliating to hand in a blank answer sheet. Chaoge sighed inwardly. That was spot on. Mu Yao Yao looked at Feng Wu and saw the latter sitting there with her eyes closed to adjust her breathing. She tried to provoke Feng Wu. What a poser. Feng Wu ignored her. Resting her head on her left hand, Mu Yao Yao played with her pen in her right hand and casually said, Feng Wu, I'm warning you. Keep your eyes on your own paper and don't try to copy mine. I'll report you. Those around Mu Yao Yao guffawed. Read more chapter on novel full. Duan Chaoyin followed suit. Duan Chaoge, I'm warning you. Keep your eyes on your own paper and don't try to copy mine. I'll report you. Ha ha ha. Everyone cracked up. They seemed to have forgotten that Feng Wu and Chaoge were here as exemptions. How could anyone with that exam permit be ignorant? However, they simply looked past that, as if trying to fool themselves. Chaoge was furious at the provocation. She smacked the desk and jumped to her feet. Mu Yao Yao, you idiot. You know nothing. Xiao Wu got 290 in the test Grand Secretary Fang gave her yesterday. Everyone was silent at Duan Chaoge's bellow. All eyes were on Duan Chaoge. 3 seconds later, ha ha ha. Mu Yao Yao was the first to burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that she was in tears. That seemed to flick a switch and everyone around her began to scream with laughter. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Chapter 596 A pretty girl like her. 290 points. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Mu Yao Yao laughed until her belly ached. She leaned back in her chair, guffawed, and almost gave herself the cramps. So did the rest of the candidates. 290. Ha 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 ha, Duan Chaoge, are you an idiot or are you an idiot? Duan Chaoyin also leaned over her desk and her voice trembled with laughter. 290. Ha ha ha, do you have any idea how hard Imperial College's exam is? And do you even know what the questions are? 290. The top student only got 250 last year. Ha ha ha, Mu Yao Yao was still laughing so hard that she couldn't talk normally. She was only able to calm down after quite some time. And you know what's really funny? Grand Secretary Fang. Ha 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 ha, Feng Wu, you do know that Grand Secretary Fang is my grandfather, right? His time is so precious that he didn't even have time to teach me. And you say he taught you, gave you tests, and corrected your papers? You've got to be kidding me. That's the funniest joke I've ever heard. Ha 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 ha. Look, Feng Wu chose the wrong person to talk herself up with. This is Princess Mu, and that's Princess Mu's grandfather. Would he teach Feng Wu instead of Princess Mu? Duan Chaoyin was trying her best to flatter Mu Yaoyao, and she would agree to anything the latter said. Mu Yaoyao said arrogantly, "Of course not. My grandpa only lent her a few books. How dare she go around telling everyone that my grandpa prefers her to me and looks after her? She's shameless." Smack. Duan Chaoga smacked her desk. Of course Grand Secretary Fang prefers Xiao Wu. He gave us past exam papers every day. He corrected our papers and explained everything to us. He said Xiao Wu is so clever that no one's her match. Really? How so? Duan Chaoyin smirked. Xiao Wu memorized 1,000 must-reads and read 10,000 extracurricular books in 7 days. Humph. You know nothing about how brilliant she is. Chaoga stuck out her chest and felt proud for her friend. Ha ha ha. However, Mu Yaoyao and Duan Chaoyin only guffawed again. Memorized 1,000 books in 7 days? And read 10,000 books, too. Who does she think she is? An immortal? No one can read so many books in such a short time. Each lie of hers is more ridiculous than the last. And do you know what's most awful about Feng Wu? What? Mu Yaoyao raised her voice. She's been sitting there all this time with her eyes closed while Duan Chaoga, her little minion, does all the talking. She can always clear her name later, saying that she didn't say anything and that Chaoga made everything up. Chaoga? Well, don't mind her. She's not right in the head. Wow. At those words, all the other candidates in the exam hall stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. For a pretty girl, she really was a schemer. No wonder they say that the most beautiful girls are the most canny ones. Poor Duan Chaoga. Doesn't she have any idea how Feng Wu is using her? Everyone was talking at the same time and no one tried to keep their voices down. Sitting on Feng Wu's left, Mu Yaoyao stared at Feng Wu with a smirk on her face. Feng Wu, not only will I ruin your reputation and make everyone despise you, I'll also drive a wedge between you and Duan Chaoga, and make her betray you as well. I'm sure what I said will make Duan Chaoga think twice. Chapter 597. There's only one explanation. But what really happened was Mu Yaoyao didn't know Duan Chaoga at all. Chaoga might be impulsive and hot-headed, but there was one thing that she would always believe: she was on Feng Wu's side no matter what. Mu Yaoyao. Chaoga smacked her desk and jumped to her feet. Quiet. There came a female voice. And everyone turned in that direction. The voice belonged to a pretty young woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. She was slightly older than the candidates. Feng Wu had met her before. It was that teacher who had tried to give Feng Wu a hard time when she went to register for the exam. If Feng Wu remembered correctly, the teacher was called Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi came in with a stack of exam papers. She scanned the room with her eyes and fixed her gaze on Feng Wu in the end. The look she gave Feng Wu was hostile. She then snorted. The exam is going to start now and you're still bickering? Xiao Yi wasn't the only teacher in the exam hall. As a matter of fact, Imperial College's entrance exam was probably the strictest exam out there. Each column was monitored by a separate invigilator. That was to say, there were 10 of them in total in this hall. Right now, they were all giving out exam papers to the candidates. Each exam paper contained 5 pages, which made it 10 pages in total along with the answer sheets. Everyone ended up with quite a stack of sheets. Xiao Yi was in charge of Feng Wu's column and she smirked at Feng Wu when she gave her the paper. In a voice low enough for only Feng Wu to hear, she said, "Let's see how many points you can get." Qiao Yi had always been rather hostile toward Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu had been composed from the very beginning and ignored all the provocation. Upon receiving her paper, Feng Wu quickly skimmed through the questions. Good, she had covered most of the topics. Feng Wu was much more confident now. She started with section 1. The first section was to fill in the blanks. Grand Secretary Fang was as experienced as he claimed. He was right about finding all the answers in those 1,000 books. Feng Wu smiled a little. Before long, she finished all 10 questions without any difficulty. Feng Wu glanced at Chaoge, who looked back at Feng Wu with a pleading expression in her eyes. Feng Wu nodded and closed her eyes. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu was communicating with Feng Tutu, who was in Chaoge's chest pocket at the moment. This was the cheating method Feng Wu had come up with. She would tell Feng Tutu the answers, and it would then tell them to Chaoge. All Chaoge needed to do was write everything down. But when Feng Wu tried to talk to Feng Tutu in her head, she got no reply. Feng Wu. There was only one explanation. Feng Tutu was fast asleep. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. It was normal for a cub to be sleeping all the time, but not now. Chaoge was a little flustered and began to poke her belly with a finger, trying to wake up the little thing. But Feng Tutu turned around in Chaoge's warm pocket and went on sleeping. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Neither did Chaoge. Both sighed in resignation and Feng Wu had no choice but to move on to the next question. The second section required writing from memory. Like the first section, this part was a test of one's memory. As long as one worked hard enough, it was impossible to get this part wrong. Chapter 598 What? His Royal Highness is the Invigilator. Qiao Yi walked from the first row to the last and saw that everyone was doing a good job. Even Feng Wu seemed to be giving correct answers. However, she frowned when she spotted Chaoge's paper. It was completely blank. Qiao Yi was about to say something when steady footsteps came from outside, and from the sound of it, a lot of people were coming this way. What an aura! How intimidating was this power! Many looked up involuntarily, trying to see what VIP was coming. However, they almost dropped their pens. His Royal Highness. And no way. O.M.G. Were they hallucinating? Jun Linyuan was in the same exam hall with them. Qiao Yi was the head invigilator in this hall and her eyes widened in astonishment when she saw Jun Linyuan. It seemed that she had no idea that the Crown Prince would be coming either. Jun Linyuan didn't come alone. Mr. Lu was by his side and Feng was right behind him. Your Royal Highness, sir, Qiao Yi was a little flustered. As a pretty young woman, Qiao Yi worshipped and admired Jun Linyuan to a fault, like many other women her age. And now, the legend was right in front of her. In his usual arrogant manner, Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu with a passive face. Mr. Lu rubbed his forehead. Forget about inspecting the exam halls, the young man was here for the girl. While the Crown Prince couldn't look away from Feng Wu, Mr. Lu and Feng exchanged knowing looks. Mr. Lu. Qiao Yi, who had been puffed up with arrogance in front of Feng Wu, was at a loss over what to do now. Cheeks flushed, she didn't even know where to put her hands and feet. Mr. Lu asked, Your Royal Highness, have you tried invigilating an exam before? No, replied Jun Linyuan in a cold voice. If that's the case. Your Royal Highness, would you like to monitor this one? Feng sighed with relief. It seemed that he wouldn't be alone in trying to make excuses for the Crown Prince. However, the candidates' mouths fell open at the suggestion. Seriously? His Royal Highness? An invigilator? What was Mr. Lu thinking? There was no way His Royal Highness would agree. But Mu Yaoyao and the others still felt their hearts skip at those words. How they wished that His Royal Highness would say yes. Especially Mu Yaoyao, who pleaded with her eyes. Please stay, please. Your Royal Highness, stay. But Feng Wu wanted exactly the opposite. She was going to help Chaoga cheat. Feng Tutu already wasn't acting as planned, and if this unpredictable Jun Linyuan joined in, it would become an impossible mission. At that thought, Feng Wu looked up at Jun Linyuan and shook her head. Go away. Please. Staring at Feng Wu with his cold, brooding eyes, Jun Linyuan smiled a little. The girl really wanted him to leave, didn't she? Well, she wouldn't get what she wanted. He nodded. All right. That was a reply to Mr. Liu. All right. Feng Wu almost banged her head on her desk at that answer. Jun Linyuan. Why did that guy hate her so much? He kept raising the difficulty level for her, telling her to get top place and get full marks. Meanwhile, he kept pulling her leg, stopping her from reading her books and almost making her late for the exam. Luckily, by some miracle, the exam had been postponed, or her plan would have been completely ruined by Jun Linyuan. Chapter 599. She doesn't know the answer. Feng Wu was vexed, but the rest of the candidates were elated. Especially the girls, who all had butterflies in their stomachs. His Royal Highness he was here. And they were here in the same room with him. So close. This was something they could brag about for the rest of their lives. Even Xiao Yi was over the moon, to say nothing of the students. She couldn't help but speculate. Why would His Royal Highness agree? For whom? Mr. Liu had no idea that his suggestion had stirred up nearly all the female candidates here. With a wave of his hand, Mr. Liu said, we won't need so many invigilators here. Xiao Yi, stay. The rest of you can leave now. Hence, the other invigilators left the hall. Feng brought in an armchair and put it right at the front of the hall. That was, right opposite Feng Wu. The two people were less than 2 meters apart. Many girls were sick with jealousy. Why was Feng Wu the lucky one? On the other side, Mu Yaoyao was infatuated with the crown prince's chiseled profile. He was beautiful. She felt as if her soul had been stolen away. Why would His Royal Highness say yes? Of everyone in this room, Feng Wu was the one His Royal Highness hated the most, so there was no way that he was staying for her. Apart from Feng Wu, Mu Yaoyao deemed herself the prettiest girl with the best manners and from the finest background. The more she thought about it, the pinker her cheeks became. She thought her heart was going to jump out of her throat. But the crown prince never took his eyes off Feng Wu for one moment. The look he gave her was sharp, fierce, and stern. It was the look a beast gave its prey, very aggressive. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Read more chapter on novel full. Whatever. She would finish her exam first. She quickly finished the first 2 sections. That cheered her up a little, for she knew all the answers and was confident that she would get full marks for them. She then moved on to section 3. The multiple choice questions. The answer was only correct when all correct options and only the correct ones were selected. Moreover, most of the subjects covered in this section were from those 10,000 books. Feng Wu tended to lose points in this section. She was very careful and wanted to make sure that she got everything right. For not only did she have to be first, she had to get full marks. Question 1, done. Question 2, done. The problem was that Feng Wu still had 3 unread books from those 10,000 and she hoped that she was lucky enough to not run into anything she hadn't read. Question 8. Question 9. Up to the 9th question, Feng Wu was still confident that she had gotten everything right. Her head went blank when she read the 10th question. No doubt she hadn't read anything on this subject before. The only possibility was that it was from one of the 3 unread books. Feng Wu took a deep breath. She went through everything she had learned and racked her brain to find an answer. However, to her frustration that she couldn't find one. She knew nothing about this subject. She didn't have an answer. And that was a fact. This question that she wouldn't get any points. Chapter 600 Heart Racing. It would be much easier if all Feng Wu wanted was to get the highest mark of all the students, but she needed more than that. She had to get full marks. Otherwise, her broken star piece. Feng Wu took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, she stared at Jun Linyuan, looking disgruntled. She wouldn't be so helpless over this question if he hadn't made her slept. She was displeased. Jun Linyuan frowned. He had postponed Imperial College's entrance exam for her alone. Shouldn't she feel a debt of gratitude for his kind act and wag her tail at him like a puppy now? Instead, she was giving him attitude. That upset His Royal Highness right away. Humph. Feng Wu grunted inwardly, feeling as angry as she was aggrieved. She picked a random answer, then moved on to Section 4. She made a mental note to come back to this question and give it another go once she finished all the other sections. Section 4 was Feng Wu's favorite. Analyzing techniques and manuals and coming up with innovations, this was practically handing marks to Feng Wu on a plate. She could already get full marks on questions like these when she was 5 years old. Section 5 was on auxiliary skills. And Feng Wu was even more confident about this section. She had more knowledge on auxiliary skills than experienced teachers in Imperial College, more so than the teachers who came up with these questions. No question they designed would be close enough to defeat Feng Wu, and she would get full marks without breaking a sweat. The entire exam took 4 hours in total. But it only took Feng Wu half an hour to finish all the questions. Once she was done with her own, she proceeded to Chaoga's. Feng Tutu. Feng Tutu. Feng Wu closed her eyes and called Feng Tutu, who lay in Chaoga's pocket, in her head. The cub had finally gotten enough sleep and woke up at Feng Wu's call. It rubbed its eyes and yawned. I'll speak and you'll write on Chaoga's stomach. Understand? Feng Tutu talked to Feng Tutu in her head. Yeah, Feng Tutu nodded. Read more chapter on novel full. Feng Wu then began to deliver the answers, while Feng Tutu scratched everything on Chaoga's stomach. Feng Tutu could write? Well, it couldn't before, but after a crash course from Feng Wu in the past few days, the little thing could write now. Chaoga was thrilled. Finally. The answers. However, Jun Linyuan frowned at that moment. For as the most able man in the room, he had sensed the slightest fluctuation of spiritual essence. And it was between a person and an animal, instead of between two people. That was because to prevent candidates from cheating, Imperial College had blocked all telepathic channels between people. It took Chaoga a few minutes to finish answering the first question in Section 1. She was slowed down quite a bit because she had to guess what Feng Tutu was writing. Jun Linyuan rose to his feet just as Feng Wu was about to send out the answer to the second question. That made Feng Wu jump a little. After all, she was cheating. However, she managed to keep her face calm and her eyes closed, as if she was resting. With his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan walked from the first row to the last and back again like any normal invigilator. He ended up stopping next to Feng Wu. Many girls almost dropped their pens in excitement at Jun Linyuan's reaction. They were so excited. So nervous. And so thrilled. Knock, 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 Jun Linyuan tapped Feng Wu's desk with his long fingers. Feng Wu had to open her eyes. She raised her head and shot Jun Linyuan a warning glance. Chapter 601 She's cheating. Jun Linyuan, stay out of my way. Leave me alone. She was warning him. The Crown Prince was displeased. He would have cut her some slack if she had pleaded nicely, but since she was still so proud, little Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan cast a stern look at her. Answer your own paper and don't think about cheating. Answer your own paper and don't think about cheating? At those words, everyone was shocked. Feng Wu was practically killing Jun Linyuan with her eyes. He just couldn't let a day pass without making trouble for her, could he? That's right. Jun Linyuan nodded at Feng Wu. Feng Wu almost exploded. What had she ever done to deserve such a man? Jun Linyuan went back to his chair, but still kept his sharp gaze on Feng Wu. Mu Yaoyao threw a dirty look at Feng Wu. Bitch! That woman had done everything to attract His Royal Highness's attention. She even pretended to be angry and impatient. How could anyone be that fake? Mu Yaoyao couldn't stand it anymore. His Royal Highness must be here because of me. Mu Yaoyao convinced herself in her head. Sensing Mu Yaoyao's gaze, Feng Wu darted an involuntary glance at Mu Yaoyao and looked at the latter's answer sheet in passing. Mu Yaoyao glared at Feng Wu. All of a sudden, she recalled what Jun Linyuan just said. It seemed that His Royal Highness really hated Feng Wu. He would have to remember her for her help if she tried to frame Feng Wu for him now. At that thought, Mu Yaoyao cried out, "Feng Wu! Why do you keep looking at my answer sheet?" That startled all the candidates in the hall. What? Feng Wu was looking at Princess Mu's answer sheet. Feng Wu was speechless. How could this Mu Yaoyao be so shameless? However, Mu Yaoyao wasn't going to stop there. She had made up her mind to help His Royal Highness by ruining Feng Wu's reputation forever. Hence, Mu Yaoyao raised a hand. Your Royal Highness. Feng Wu is cheating. She's copying my answers. Wowed at a tattler. Right in the middle of an exam. Oh God. Feng Wu was so doomed. All eyes were on Jun Linyuan and everyone waited for his verdict. Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan was looking at Feng Wu with a tiny smile on his face, which was so inscrutable that no one could guess what was going on in his head. Mr. Lu frowned. That Mu Yaoyao was an idiot. Did she have no idea what Feng Wu meant to Jun Linyuan? How did she have the guts to denigrate Feng Wu in front of His Royal Highness? Mr. Lu, Jun Linyuan, and even Xiao Yi looked at Mu Yaoyao in resignation. It's true. Your Royal Highness, sir. I saw Feng Wu stealing glances at my paper and she wrote down something after she looked. She was copying me. Mu Yaoyao said indignantly. The corner of Mr. Lu's mouth twitched. Xiao Yi went to Feng Wu's desk to check her exam paper, then went to look at Mu Yaoyao's. Despite Xiao Yi's willingness to take Mu Yaoyao's side, all evidence was against this girl. Seeing the frown on Jun Linyuan's face and that Mu Yaoyao wouldn't let it drop, Xiao Yi said in a hurry, Mu Yaoyao, that's not possible. Why not? Feng Wu copied me. I saw it with my own eyes. I have proof. Mu Yaoyao was exasperated. She knew how scheming this Xiao Yi was. This woman had been stealing glances at His Royal Highness all the time. Bitch. Chapter 602 Paper A and Paper B. Xiao Yi took a deep breath. Mu Yaoyao, first of all, there are two sets of the exam paper today, that is, Paper A and Paper B. Candidates in adjacent columns are given different sets, so even if Feng Wu tried to copy your answer, she wouldn't be able to use it. Moreover, she has finished answering all her questions and you're only on section 2 at the moment. Xiao Yi hated to take Feng Wu's side, but she had no choice when all the facts were laid out in front of her. Mu Yaoyao cried out in surprise, Paper A and Paper B. What's that about? That's never happened before. Feng Wu wanted to ask the same question. She felt utterly defeated by the news. She had planned everything out and was ready for all kinds of complications. She was sure that she could use Feng Tutu to send all the correct answers to Chaoga. Once she had finished answering her paper, all that was left to do was deliver the answers to Chaoga. But now they were telling her that she and Chaoga had different exam papers. Qiao Yi wasn't able to answer Mu Yaoyao's question now, but luckily, Mr. Lu was here. He chuckled. Well, that's indeed a newly introduced measure this year, to prevent cheating, of course. Both sets are of the same difficulty and everyone is still tested at the same level. Speaking of which, the suggestion actually came from His Royal Highness a few days ago, and we just happened to have a backup set of the exam paper ready. Jun Linyuan. No wonder even Grand Secretary Fang didn't know about this. This new method came from Jun Linyuan himself only a few days ago. Feng Wu felt like she had been played and she was furious. Looking up, she stared at Jun Linyuan with a murderous look in her eyes. Well, the look on Feng Wu's face reminded Jun Linyuan of an infuriated cub of some beast. She didn't have any power, but she was aggressive and ready to explode. He loved to see this unyielding side of her. Looking back at her with a taunting expression on his face, Jun Linyuan grinned, feeling very pleased with himself. Kiddo, you're too young to play this game. Feng Wu gritted her teeth. That was why the Crown Prince of the Empire had come to monitor an exam himself, and of all the halls out there, he had to pick hers and sit right opposite her. And that was why he had that smug look on his face. Read more chapter at VIP Novel. Feng Wu closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Calm down, calm down, calm down. Things were already going south and she had to find a way to turn things around. After a few deep breaths, Feng Wu gradually came back to her senses. But it didn't change the fact that she was still mad. What should she do now? It was by sheer luck that Qiao Yi revealed the truth because of Mu Yaoyao's farce, otherwise. Feng Wu's legs felt weak whenever she imagined what would happen if Chaoga had filled her answer sheet with answers for paper A. That would really ruin Chaoga. For their enemies would grab the chance and use it against them. Chaoga was flabbergasted. Paper A. Paper B. She had paper B, which meant that Xiao Wu had paper A. Xiao Wu didn't even know what the questions for paper B were. How would she be able to send Chaoga the correct answers? Chaoga scratched her head. It seemed that she had no choice but to admit her failure. But Feng Wu wasn't ready to give up. There had to be a way. Yes. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. She didn't have paper B, but Chaoga did. Feng Wu darted a glance at Chaoga. Huh? Chaoga was confused. Feng Wu looked at Chaoga and her unanswered exam paper in turn. Chapter 603 Jun Linyuan. All Chaoga needed to do was move her exam paper a little so that Feng Wu could read the questions. Feng Wu was very confident in her good memory. But Chaoga didn't get the hint. What? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Ahem, seeing the girl trying her tricks under his nose, Jun Linyuan was very amused. And she even shielded her face with her right hand, as if that could stop him from seeing what she was trying to do. Finally, Chaoga understood what Feng Wu wanted. She slowly raised her exam paper a little. Feng Wu memorized everything with a single glance. Before Feng Wu could proceed to the next section, Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and went up to her desk. He just happened to completely block Chaoga from Feng Wu's view. Feng Wu. Standing next to Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan picked up her paper and began to slowly flip through her answer sheets without leaving his spot. Feng Wu. She could tell that Jun Linyuan was doing it on purpose. Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan and bit her lower lip. She looked like a puffed-up balloon fish. She still had a little baby fat left on her cheeks and her fair skin reminded him of steamed buns. They looked so adorable that Jun Linyuan wanted to give them a squeeze. But that was only in Jun Linyuan's head. The look on his face was as stern as ever. He went on reading Feng Wu's answers and the more he read, the brighter his eyes became. She was indeed his girl. Her answers were impeccable. Are you done? Seeing that Jun Linyuan still wouldn't move, Feng Wu was worried sick. It had been 2 hours since the exam started and Chalga couldn't write very fast. If she didn't give Chalga the answers now, she wouldn't be able to finish in time. But at Feng Wu's words, all the candidates in the hall, boys and girls included, looked at her in resignation. She was talking to the crown prince of the empire. How could she sound so impatient? Anyone else would wish that His Royal Highness could stand by their side forever. But Feng Wu. What a poser. Overwhelmed with jealousy, Mu Yaoyao stared at Feng Wu with bloodshot eyes, wishing that she could tear the latter into pieces. Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Feng Wu and his mouth curved into an enigmatic smile. His eyes sparkled in the sunlight. The next second, Jun Linyuan grabbed Feng Wu's hand and yanked. Ah, Feng Wu cried out. However, before she could react, Jun Linyuan had dragged her away in large strides. From behind, he looked powerful, resolute, and puffed up with arrogance. That odd behavior astonished the other candidates again. Xiao Wu, seeing that Feng Wu was being dragged away, Chalga rushed out to help her at once. However, Mr. Lu stopped her in time. Don't. Your score will be cancelled if you step out of this hall now. But Chalga ignored him and still ran toward Feng Wu. Feng Wu was stumbling after Jun Linyuan, but she still managed to call out over her shoulder, "Go back to your seat and finish your exam." Chalga always listened to Feng Wu. Even Mr. Lu couldn't stop Chalga, but she went back to her seat obediently at Feng Wu's instruction. Seeing that the crown prince had gone off with Feng Wu, Mu Yaoyao almost bit the tip of her pen off. Feng Wu. Many of the girls cursed under their breaths. Chapter 604. Picking on her is his greatest hobby. She was just a pretty face, it was so shameless of her to seduce His Royal Highness like that. They were too busy feeling jealous of Feng Wu to notice that she had been taken away against her will. Jun Linyuan dragged Feng Wu out. Once they were out of the exam hall, Feng Wu threw Jun Linyuan's hand off and yelled at him, "Jun Linyuan. What have I done to deserve your torture?" Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu with a livid face. Feng Wu turned to leave. He couldn't remove her from an exam just because he wanted to. Feng Wu walked in the front and Jun Linyuan followed her in silence. Because everyone was taking the exam, the usually boisterous college was as quiet as the middle of the night. When they walked past the next building, Feng Wu looked over her shoulder to find Jun Linyuan still following her. She flared up again. She was so mad at Jun Linyuan just then that she almost forgot about Chalga, who was still taking the exam. Feng Wu spotted another exam hall on the way and she was struck by an idea. She could get someone else's exam paper. And she would be able to send the answers to Chalga. Problem solved. However, Jun Linyuan was following her everywhere, leaving her with no chance to carry out her plan. Therefore, Feng Wu deliberately tried to set Jun Linyuan off, so that he would storm off at some point. "You're the crown prince of the empire, for God's sake. Why are you following me around? It's bad for your reputation, you know." Feng Wu tried to provoke Jun Linyuan. "So, is this your plan to drive me away?" Jun Linyuan pressed close, and Feng Wu stepped back. There was a door behind Feng Wu and she was cornered. Resting his right palm on the door, Jun Linyuan confined Feng Wu in the space between his arm and the wall. He leaned over. And Feng Wu turned her face away. His warm lips brushed against her cheek, leaving behind a burning sensation. Despite the anger she exhibited, Feng Wu was actually moving her hands swiftly behind her back to unlock the door. That was right. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were right outside Mr. Lu's office. Since she couldn't drive Jun Linyuan away, Feng Wu's only choice was to lead him to the principal's office, in the hope that Mr. Lu would have the sample exam paper stored here. When Jun Linyuan leaned over again. Thump. Feng Wu finally unlocked the door. She spun around and deftly jumped away from Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan, you won't get what you want this time. To Feng Wu's disappointment, Jun Linyuan reacted so quickly that as soon as Feng Wu jumped away, he moved after her. Feng Wu looked up to find Jun Linyuan right in front of her. Ah! Feng Wu cried out and stumbled back. Jun Linyuan smirked and fixed his brooding gaze on Feng Wu. Little Feng Wu, that's very bold of you. No, it's not, Feng Wu kept stepping back. But she knew where she was going. She had glanced at the table the moment she rushed into the office. That was where the file should be. As expected, Feng Wu spotted a thick manila folder on the desk. Feng Wu's first reaction was that it was the exam paper. But Jun Linyuan would doubtlessly see through her plan if she headed for it right away. She knew Jun Linyuan too well. His greatest hobby was picking on her. And he had set her up 100 times. Hence, it was pivotal that she kept her plan from him. Chapter 605 Stay Away From Me. Hence, Feng Wu kept falling back. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes, stared at his prey, and pressed close. Stay away from me. Feng Wu had reached the desk with her palms on the edge, but Jun Linyuan kept moving closer. In order to stay out of his reach, Feng Wu bent backward. But Jun Linyuan was still coming her way. In the end, Feng Wu was almost lying on her back on the desk. As soon as her fingers made contact with the folder, Feng Wu stuffed it into her ring. Ah! Feng Wu cried out all of a sudden. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in confusion. Feng Wu shoved Jun Linyuan away and rushed toward the door, but Jun Linyuan caught her by her wrist. I need to go pee. Let go. With another push, Feng Wu broke free. She rushed into the toilet in the office as swiftly as a rabbit and slammed the door behind her. Jun Linyuan was speechless. Meanwhile, in Feng Wu's exam hall, Feng Wu's paper had been taken in already. Mr. Liu was going to leave, but he stopped after glancing at Feng Wu's answers. Picking up the answer sheets, he read the first word to the last and his eyes lit up. That girl was amazing. She was a genius. And she was going to become a student of Imperial College. Mr. Liu was elated at that thought. If Feng Wu was this good, what about her friend? Back then, little Chaoga was a smart girl herself. With that expectation, Mr. Liu walked toward Chaoga's desk. He could barely control the smile on his face. However, as soon as he saw Chaoga's paper, one look and he almost had a heart attack. Mr. Liu was petrified. It was completely blank. Well, she had answered the first question, but she had crossed out the answer beyond recognition. After that, there was nothing. The pages were all left blank. Patting his chest, he took a deep breath. At that moment, Xiao Yi saw that the principal looked like he was about to faint and she hurried near. Following Mr. Liu's eyes, one look and Xiao Yi's eyes popped out. Blank. 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 Not one question was answered. Duan Chaoga. You. Xiao Yi looked at Duan Chaoga as if the latter had lost her mind. Answer the questions. Duan Chaoga felt like crying. She wanted to, but she knew next to nothing. What was she supposed to write? She didn't understand a single question here. You only have less than half the time left. Don't tell me you're going to hand in blank answer sheets. Xiao Yi stared at Chaoga. Are you trying to protest against the school or something? Xiao Yi was furious. Teehee, Duan Chaoyin snickered. Miss, Duan Chaoga is always like this. It's not that she's trying to make a point, she's just ignorant. What? Xiao Yi stared at Duan Chaoga in disbelief. It couldn't be. Mr. Liu was equally surprised. Xiao Wu was such a brilliant girl that he couldn't believe Chaoga would hand in blank sheets. No way. Mr. Liu, it's true. Duan Chaoga is an idiot. She always gets 0 marks in her exams, having her here is a joke. Duan Chaoyin guffawed. Duan Chaoga. She pounded her fist on the desk and glared at Duan Chaoyin with bloodshot eyes. What? Am I not telling the truth? Asked Duan Chaoyin. Chapter 606. Each to their own home. Chaoga was so mad. She couldn't retort because Duan Chaoyin was telling the truth. She couldn't answer a single question. Ha ha ha. Duan Chaoga, how dare an idiot like you take the exam? Duan Chaoyin went on writing down her answers as she spoke. Compared to Chaoga, Duan Chaoyin had been preparing for this exam for years. Looking from a distance, at least all the blanks on her answer sheets had been filled in. Chaoga was so mad. But she couldn't talk back. She jumped to her feet. Duan Chaoyin smirked. You don't know the answers and it's my fault. If I were you, I'd leave this room at this moment. Mr. Lu looked at Duan Chaoyin, wondering which family this mean girl was from. Looking down, Mr. Lu darted a look at her exam paper. Duan Chaoyin? Judging by the name, she was Chaoga's sister. Mr. Lu frowned. Silence. Everyone quieted down right away and went back to writing. You, sit down and finish your paper. Mr. Lu stared at Chaoga. Chaoga sat down, still disgruntled. However, she knew all the words on the paper, but put them together and she didn't know what they were asking. Behind her, Duan Chaoyue and Duan Chaoyin exchanged looks and gloated. The sun would have to rise from the west before Duan Chaoga could write down anything. However, at that moment, Chaoga shuddered all of a sudden. She then picked up her pen and started writing. Many were still laughing at Chaoga's predicament. Read more chapter on novel full. But they saw that she had begun to answer the questions. She wrote down the answers without even reading the questions. Everyone was shocked. Mr. Lu, who had given up on Chaoga, turned his gaze back to her. He stood there and watched Chaoga write. Whoosh. Chaoga wrote with a steady hand and all her answers were correct. That. Mr. Lu was astonished. Was that even possible? Section 1. Section 2. Section 3. Mr. Lu watched as Chaoga filled in all the blanks. He suddenly said, You're writing down your answers without looking at the questions. Chaoga's stomach lurched and her back stiffened. Luckily, she reacted quickly and said, I've memorized all the questions. I don't need to read them again. Mr. Lu. Ding. The bell signaling the end rang the moment Chaoga put down her pen. Satisfied, Chaoga smacked her paper on the desk. Done. She stretched her arms and had never felt this at ease. Duan Chaoyin smirked. You? Done? I bet you made everything up. The others laughed with her. Mr. Lu could have left much earlier, but he stayed until the end to watch Chaoga answer her paper. Right now, he gave Duan Chaoyin a meaningful look before strolling off. Duan Chaoyin was bewildered. Had she said something wrong? Everyone went back home after the exam. Chaoga returned to the Feng Manor with Feng Wu. Seeing Feng Wu and Feng Lu come back together, Feng Yanfeng was confused. He asked Feng Lu, Did Xiao Wu go see you off at the exam venue? "607 Run like the wind." Feng Yiran and Feng Sang were both at home today, and both turned to look at Feng Wu in unison. Feng Lu and Lady Wang smirked. See me off? Since when is she so nice? Alright. Feng Yanfeng lost interest right away. He was the minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel now, replacing Sir Yan. He had never been in such high and vigorous spirits, and it felt like he was walking on clouds all the time. Speaking of which, Feng Yanfeng had to thank Feng Wu for it, which was why he didn't dare fall out with her. Lady Wang, on the other hand, wouldn't leave Feng Wu alone. She dropped the bomb straight away. Feng Wu almost ruined the reputation of the entire clan today. Feng Yanfeng could live with anything, but not when the reputation of the Feng clan was at stake. What happened? Crossing his hands behind his back, Feng Yanfeng frowned, darted a look at Feng Wu, then turned to Lady Wang. Lady Wang smirked. What happened? Ha! She went to Imperial College today as well. Feng Yanfeng frowned. So what if she did? Why can't she? Ha! Then ask your dear niece what she was doing there. Lady Wang looked furious. Feng Yanfeng frowned and thought to himself, was Xiao Wu there to find herself a potential husband? Ahem, as shameful as that sounded, it was understandable. It would do the Feng clan good if she married into a good family. However, Lady Wang answered the question herself. She was there to take the exam. What? Feng Yanfeng thought he heard wrong and looked at Lady Wang in confusion. Lady Wang snorted. Yes, you heard me. Your dear niece was there as an exam candidate. Ha ha ha, Feng Yanfeng burst out laughing right away. My lady, you're very funny. Xiao Wu has no spiritual essence whatsoever and she's nowhere near a level 9 spiritual master, which is the entry requirement for Imperial College. How could she take the exam? Feng Yanfeng thought his wife was nuts. Lady Wang smirked. How am I supposed to know what your niece is capable of? She actually got an exam permit. Feng Yanfeng's eyes flickered. Are you being serious? Do I look like I'm joking? I wish I was. But in fact, I'm telling the truth. Your niece is really a piece of work. Lady Wang said as she walked in. And her tone was most unpleasant. Feng Yanfeng frowned, then turned to Feng Wu. How did you get your exam permit? Crossing her hands behind her, Feng Wu straightened her back and said proudly, I got you that ministerial position, didn't I? After that, do you think a mere exam permit would be a problem for me? Feng Yanfeng stiffened. By the way, uncle, when am I going to receive my 10,000 taels of silver? Feng Wu glanced at Feng Yanfeng with a half-smile on her face. Feng Yanfeng said, well. Kiddo, that's so sudden. Well, I have some errands to run. See you around. He slunk off after that. Feng Wu smiled a little. She wasn't worried about Feng Yanfeng defaulting on the debt at all. In fact, she would be concerned if he did pay her back. Feng Wu and Chaoga then went back to Fallen Star Yard. Sister, how did it go? Feng Xiaoqi ran toward them like the wind. Feng Wu smiled. I did great, of course. Yeah. I knew it. My sister is the best. Sister, they're placing bets out there and I put all my money on you. Chapter 609 Feng Wu as viewed by Emperor Wu. But why? Feng Wu wasn't convinced. Jun Lin Yuan's threat was real. She had to get full marks, or her broken star piece would be. Grand Secretary Fang grumpily jabbed Feng Wu's forehead with a finger. Kiddo, you're asking for too much. Why do you need full marks? In an essay question like this, no matter how excellent your answer is, a point or two will end up being deducted. Forget about full marks. Really? Feng Wu looked crestfallen. Grand Secretary Fang was disgruntled. What more can full marks do for you? You'll still get the highest score in the exam. Isn't that enough for you? But I have my reasons, Feng Wu wailed. You have to get full marks. Yes. And what if you can't? Then I'd rather die. Feng Wu looked like a deflated balloon. Grand Secretary Fang was then lost in thought and didn't speak for a while. Old master, you. Feng Wu was about to say something, but the old man waved her off. Off you go. You'll see how you did when the results are published. After Feng Wu left, Grand Secretary Fang took the paper she just wrote to the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace. Emperor Wu had thought that he would never get to see Grand Secretary Fang again after the old man retired. However, the old man sent a message to ask for an audience today. Emperor Wu went to greet the old man at the gate. "My dear subject, do come in." Come to think of it, Grand Secretary Fang used to be Emperor Wu's teacher when the emperor was still a crown prince. Hence, Emperor Wu had always had great respect for the old man. Grand Secretary Fang cupped his fists at Emperor Wu as soon as he entered the hall. "Your Majesty, congratulations." "Huh?" Emperor Wu was elated. "For what?" "Your Majesty, congratulations on discovering another genius in our empire." Grand Secretary Fang couldn't suppress the excitement in his voice. "Another genius?" Emperor Wu was delighted. "Fang, do tell me about it." "Your Majesty, Imperial College's entrance exam took place today." "I know. I came up with the last few questions myself." "In that case, Your Majesty, please have a look at these answers." Grand Secretary Fang then carefully placed Feng Wu's paper on Emperor Wu's table. Exactly how talented was this person to make Grand Secretary Fang so excited? Emperor Wu darted a suspicious look at Grand Secretary Fang, picked up the exam paper, and glanced at it. One look and he was surprised. Such nice handwriting. Each stroke was full and powerful and all the characters were of the same size. It was so neat that it looked better than a printed work. Nice handwriting. Emperor Wu already liked the person before reading the answers. "Of course," said Grand Secretary Fang proudly, as if he was the one being complimented. "I taught the person myself." "Fang, did you take in another pupil?" Emperor Wu knew how strict Grand Secretary Fang was, and only a handful of people were talented enough for the old man to consider them. "Pupil?" Grand Secretary Fang gave him a wry smile. "I wish I had such a pupil. Unfortunately, I'm not qualified enough." Even a great scholar and an experienced politician like Grand Secretary Fang considered himself not good enough to be this person's teacher. Could anyone be that talented? Emperor Wu began to read the answers. Everything in section 1 was right. Emperor Wu couldn't get enough of the handwriting. It was said that one could tell what a person was like from their handwriting, and this one had to be a really good-looking person. Emperor Wu was pleased and he read on. Section 2, full marks again. The more he read, the more pleased Emperor Wu became. This is a great kid, so well-grounded in basic skills. Chapter 6:10 Genius. After praising the answers, Emperor Wu turned to Grand Secretary Fang. "I can tell how prudent and tenacious this kid is. I deliberately chose an uncommon extract from an annotation, but this kid still got it right." Grand Secretary Fang nodded inwardly. Xiao Wu was as hard-working as she was pretty. He had never met anyone more industrious. Emperor Wu moved on to section 3. The multiple-choice questions. "Wait a minute." Emperor Wu cried out in surprise. Candidates lose marks in this section all the time. They pick the wrong option, they don't pick all the correct options, or they leave one correct option out. But this kid. Emperor Wu looked at Grand Secretary Fang in amazement. This kid got everything right. Despite so many candidates taking the exam every year, Emperor Wu didn't think he had met many people who got full marks on the first 3 sections. Grand Secretary Fang gloated and said proudly, "Your Majesty, you're only on section 3. Please read on." Judging by Grand Secretary Fang's attitude, could this kid get everything right in section 4 as well? No way. Section 4 was an essay question and everyone would lose marks here. Emperor Wu read the answer attentively, trying to find the tiniest mistake. The question required the candidate to analyze the theory and application of the cracking ground stance, then try to make innovations to it. The answer was so well organized and logically solid in the analysis of its theory that one couldn't find any excuse to deduct any marks. Moreover, Emperor Wu couldn't bring himself to deduct any when the candidate had such nice handwriting. As for the innovation part, Emperor Wu's eyes widened. Wait! The stance could actually be improved in such a way. Destruction before construction. This kid was so dauntless. But he had to admit that after her improvement, the power of cracking ground, indeed. As a mage with the earth attribute himself, Emperor Wu knew better than anyone else how brilliant this innovation was. Emperor Wu looked at Grand Secretary Fang in disbelief. This really came from a kid? Yes, a 13-year-old kid. Grand Secretary Fang smiled. He was laughing inwardly at Emperor Wu's shocked face. Grand Secretary Fang had been equally shocked when he read the girl's answer for the first time and had taken a while to recover. And that was exactly what Emperor Wu was going through at the moment. Grand Secretary Fang felt so pleased. Hence, he mentioned Feng Wu's age on purpose. A 13-year-old. Emperor Wu smacked the table. The kid is only 13. It can't be. To make improvements to cracking ground required a lot of background information, and one had to be able to see the big picture to carry it out. The kid really is 13. Well, almost 14. Crossing his hands behind his back, Grand Secretary Fang raised his chin and felt ennobled. Emperor Wu was thrilled. She is so talented. There's no doubt about it. This is wonderful. Grand Secretary Fang nodded. That was right. Emperor Wu mumbled, how am I supposed to take any marks away? I have no reason to. Grand Secretary Fang nodded again. I agree with you, Your Majesty. Driven by his excitement, Emperor Wu moved on to the final section. The last two questions were on auxiliary skills and candidates often performed terribly here. After all, not everyone paid much attention to these skills, and even if they wanted to, they had to have the potential first. However, to Emperor Wu's disbelief. Chapter 611 A Genius. No doubt about it. This paper. The answer to the medicine question was absolutely correct. And so was the one on formations. Smack. Emperor Wu pounded the table with his fist and cried out in excitement, everything is correct. Everything. Grand Secretary Fang, the kid got everything right. And his answers are more precise than the standard ones. Look, he even came up with 2 solutions here. And he wrote that he could provide a third one if necessary. That's incredible. Emperor Wu had wondered at first if this kid might have copied his answers from somewhere. However, he abandoned that thought completely. Because the kid's answers were more accurate than the standard answers. The full mark was 300 and these answers were definitely worth more than that. The kid should be given more than 300 marks. Emperor Wu had only seen such talent in one other person before, and that was Jun Linyuan. Tugging at Grand Secretary Fang's sleeve excitedly, Emperor Wu said, Fang, who is this kid? Which family is he from? Quickly, bring him to me. I want to meet him. Instead of giving him an answer, Grand Secretary Fang asked, Your Majesty, do you think this kid can be given full marks? Yes. Of course. Emperor Wu smacked his palm on the table and was almost agitated. After being an examiner for so many years, have you seen better answers than these? Grand Secretary Fang said, that's because His Royal Highness has never taken the exam. He doesn't count. Apart from him, have you seen anyone else give better answers than this kid? Emperor Wu was so excited that his eyes popped. Well, no, Grand Secretary Fang said honestly. Last year, the top candidate only got 250. I think the best in the past few years scored somewhere between 270 and 280. Yes. Elated, Emperor Wu patted Grand Secretary Fang on the shoulder. Fong, you really are my most helpful subject. This teenager is so talented. Now, bring him here. Emperor Wu rubbed his hands expectantly. If you can't take him in as a pupil, I will. Ha ha ha, if he does well, I'll marry my third daughter to him. Keep it in the family, right? The old man didn't know what to say. Fong, why do you look so fazed? Isn't he only 13? Is he already engaged? That kid, Grand Secretary Fong gave Emperor Wu a strange look. Well, that kid was engaged once, but it was annulled. Nonsense. Emperor Wu pounded his desk. You should never look down on a teenager because of his lack of wealth. With that talent, he will have such a promising future. How could anyone even think about breaking a marriage contract with him? The other family will regret it so much when the exam results are out. The old man didn't know what to say. Emperor Wu patted Grand Secretary Fong on the shoulder. Well, the other family might be blind, but I'm not. I'll marry Wuxia to him later. I have to get my hands on this brilliant kid before someone else wants him for their daughter. By the way, Fong, what's the kid's name? The old man didn't know what to say. What's with that look on your face? Emperor Wu looked at Grand Secretary Fong in bewilderment. Grand Secretary Fong kept his silence. Emperor Wu thought, fine, don't tell me. I can remove the sticker on the paper myself. Chapter 6:12 It's really her. There came a tearing sound. And Emperor Wu removed the sticker on the paper. Wait, that's a girl's name. Emperor Wu found the name a little strange and he gave it a closer look. Feng Wu. She has the same name as that Feng Wu from back then. Are all girls named Feng Wu this smart? Grand Secretary Fong stared at Emperor Wu without blinking. Emperor Wu turned to Grand Secretary Fong in bewilderment and met the latter's eyes. All of a sudden, an idea struck him. Feng Wu. Emperor Wu stared at Grand Secretary Fong in disbelief. Feng Wu. Don't tell me that it's the Feng Wu. Of course Emperor Wu was agitated. He was the one who broke off the marital engagement back then. Emperor Wu thought that Feng Wu was no longer engaged to his son, but in fact, Jun Linyuan hadn't given his consent to the cancellation at the last minute. Grand Secretary Fong gave him a solemn nod. It's really her. Emperor Wu looked like he had been struck by lightning and was dazed on the spot. This is her paper. Grand Secretary Fong nodded again. Emperor Wu stumbled back and became lost in thought. It had been years since he heard Feng Wu's name. It's her, no wonder. Emperor Wu darted a look at Grand Secretary Fong, then said, even back then, she was an amazing, talented girl. No one was nearly as brilliant as she was. Unfortunately, she got greedy and pushed herself over the limit, which messed up her cultivation and she lost all her abilities. She was crippled after that. Too greedy. Pushed herself over the limit. Grand Secretary Fong shook his head. He had been indifferent to such rumors before meeting Feng Wu. However, once he knew Feng Wu well enough. Grand Secretary Fong shook his head with a wry smile. That girl was too smart and meticulous to bring that on herself. There had to be something else behind it. Fong, has that girl regained her abilities? Emperor Wu asked. That question put Grand Secretary Fong in a difficult position. He knew for a fact that Feng Wu could cultivate now and she was leveling up at a frantic pace. However, Grand Secretary Fong recalled what Feng Wu had told him. The enemy was still lurking in the dark, trying to kill her. Since Grand Secretary Fong didn't produce an immediate answer, Emperor Wu took it as silent confirmation of his speculation. He sighed. What a pity. We lost such a genius just like that. Grand Secretary Fong gestured at the paper. Her talent isn't lost. Emperor Wu agreed. You're right. Her understanding and innovation of the stances alone is proof enough of her prominence. We haven't lost her talent. Emperor Wu was secretly overwhelmed by his guilty conscience. The cancellation of the engagement was carried out in such haste that he wasn't able to help her. Emperor Wu's eyes flickered as he looked down at the paper. Grand Secretary Fang thought to himself, Xiao Wu has changed Emperor Wu's opinion of her through her answers alone. His Majesty will be thrilled if he knows that she can cultivate again. However, Grand Secretary Fang had promised Feng Wu that he wouldn't tell anyone else and he had to keep the secret for now. Imperial College. After the initial filtering, 10,000 candidates qualified to take the exam. Among them, 1,000 would be chosen from the written exam. These 1,000 would be ranked by their scores from the highest to the lowest. The teachers of Imperial College were busy correcting the exam papers. The candidates' names were always covered with stickers. The chief examiner was supposed to be Mr. Liu. After all, the entrance exam was one of the biggest events of Imperial College every year. Chapter 613, Not Good. However, Mr. Liu had had an epiphany today and had gone into seclusion. Hence, Mr. Zhuo, the deputy principal, became the chief examiner instead. If Feng Wu were here today, she would recognize Mr. Zhuo right away, for he was among those who had attacked her 5 years ago. The exam papers were divided into 10 batches and each teacher was to correct 1,000 exam papers. The teacher for the 9th group was Mr. Wu, whose family was connected to the Zhuo family by marriage. One look at this exam paper and he was struck with awe. The answers were perfect. Who on earth was this candidate? He had no idea that such a brilliant student existed in the empire. Mr. Wu knew how the stickers were put on and he managed to remove a corner without tearing the exam paper. His heart skipped a beat as soon as he took a peek at the name. Feng Wu. It couldn't be. Mr. Wu knew about Feng Wu taking part in the exam, for everyone had heard about the incident with the authenticity of the exam permit before the exam started. Feng Wu. How can it be? Mr. Wu was so curious that he removed the sticker a little bit further. He then saw the serial number on the paper. OMG! Mr. Wu nearly fainted. The serial number read 10001. Feng Wu entered the exam on recommendation and she was an addition to the 10,000 candidates, hence the 10001. And that was precisely the number on her exam paper. Mr. Wu's hands jolted and he almost knocked over the inkstone on his desk. Mr. Wu. Mr. Zhao, who sat opposite Mr. Wu, looked at him in bewilderment. Are you all right? Mr. Wu broke into a cold sweat. I'm fine. Just hungry, I guess. You don't say. Our workload is unbelievable. To finish correcting all these exam papers in 3 days, we'll have to work around the clock. Well, we're halfway done, at least. Mr. Wu nodded. He was talking to Mr. Zhao, but he didn't hear anything Mr. Zhao said. He was overwhelmed with astonishment. This paper. This paper. Mr. Wu, how are your candidates doing? Anyone good? Mr. Zhao complained, mine aren't doing great at all. The questions are so hard this year that I don't think we'll have many high scores. Mr. Wu said involuntarily, yeah, I haven't seen any exceptional candidates either. After that, Mr. Wu went back to staring at the paper and tried to think. Wait. 10001. If he could find the paper with the serial number 1000, he could easily replace Feng Wu's paper with it. An evil idea took root in Mr. Wu's head. He had been trying to get the position of deputy dean. With Mr. Liu in seclusion, it would be down to Mr. Zhuo, the deputy principal, to make the decision. The Zhuo family would never stand to see Feng Wu rise. Back then, although the Zhuo family had done everything they could to cover up the truth, Mr. Wu was among those who knew what really happened. Should he take the risk? Mr. Wu was conflicted. Looking up, he saw Mr. Zhao opposite him. Mr. Zhao was older, more experienced, and more capable. Moreover, Mr. Zhao was one of his main competitors for this position. At that thought, Mr. Wu moved into action. And it was his lucky day. The paper with the serial number 1000 just happened to be in his stack. Seriously? What a happy coincidence. Mr. Wu was shocked himself. Someone up there was doing him a favor. If this candidate number 1000 just happened to fail the exam, well. Thinking that, Mr. Wu flipped through this exam paper. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.